Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. Sorry, we're starting a few minutes late. There was a little bit of technical issues we had to take care of tonight, but I got a really fun show planned. I got my buddy Ray Felix, who's been on the show a couple of times now, and we are going to really focus on Ray tonight. Get into some stuff we didn't get in to with him before in the past. But I thought tonight, because Ray's a buddy of mine, and there's something that I miss from doing shows, and one of them is hanging out with my friends and just kind of sitting around BSing and drawing and stuff. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of have a drink and draw tonight. And while I interview Ray, we're both going to be drawing. So I'll be at my Cintiq. I don't know if Ray is going to be. I'm sorry, I'm looking for my drawing glove for my Cintiq. Right now, I'll find it. But let me bring Ray on in 1 second, because what I see in the green room looks like he needs a minute to sit down. And we will. Ray disappeared. He decided to leave the show early already. No, Ray will be right back. I don't know what happened there, but he was having some technical issues. That's why we had to we started a few minutes late. I hope he got it fixed. But yeah, so what the plan was to do tonight was just to kind of hang out with a buddy and really focus on him and obviously do the interviews like I normally do, but also just draw and share some of his work, share some of mine. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to Ray tonight, Ray has been doing this for a very long time. I'll have to let him say the years, but I believe we started around the same time, but he went in a different direction than I did, and he's definitely has much more of a larger portfolio of work than I do at the moment. But looks like, let's see if we can get him on.
Backed off.
Hey, Ray, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on?
You got the technical issues all fixed, I assume?
For real, big time technical issues.
Yes. So, so what I was saying to the audience when you disappeared as I was about to bring you on was that, one of the things I miss about shows, and there's not many things I miss about shows, but it's hanging out with my friends. And I thought tonight would be just kind of fun to for you and I just to sit back, maybe do some artwork. Mm-hmm. If you have a book you're working on or just want to doodle, that's totally fine. Mm-hmm. And just talk but you have such a body of work in the amount of time. Ooh, that's a bright ring light there. I got
Get back.
I got my 2 ring lights on, and I actually have a third on order. So
this is more natural, right?
Yeah. What color do you want? Oh, do you got the rainbow effect like I have too?
This one's like natural light versus I'm in a hospital.
Yeah. Does yours have the little remote that goes with it, or
yours is fancy? I just got this one here.
That's the same control I have, but mine came with a remote.
I can lower it.
And because I have 2, I got 2 remotes.
Nice.
But I only need 1 to function them. So the second I turn one on, so like if I don't want one on, I got to manually turn it off the other way.
I feel like I'm turning into my dad trying to program a VCR. What is this technology? This wire.
Joe Ryan's in the comments saying, "Hey Ray, what's up?
What's up? Good to see everybody."
Yep, we're gonna have
I don't see you, but in spirit.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So like I was saying, I miss just hanging out and BSing with friends and stuff at shows, going out to dinner afterwards, and I'm not a drinker, but I got my water right here. Hold on, Dickies doesn't exist anymore. So what's that there?
Glenlivet, baby. Established in 1824. Single malt Scotch whiskey. There you go.
So, So yeah, we're going to just kind of sit back, talk, draw. We got Mike Lopez in the audience as well, saying hello with a lot of
Hey,
O's.
Mike.
Um, so yeah, what I wanted to start with, like I normally, yep, go for it. Whatever you need. This is
I had soda in here earlier, but we had technical difficulty. I was drinking soda for Dan, but
uh
for
was
Dan,
it a Diet Coke?
yeah, no,
Uh,
root beer.
well, Diet Coke was Dan's favorite.
I know.
Um,
I
for
was just
those for
never catch
those
me drinking that stuff.
who well, I guess the cursing already started. That's fine.
Sorry,
It's okay.
and I'm
It's okay.
sober.
It's okay. Well, for those who don't know, and I know I've mentioned it in the
Salute.
past on here, and Dan Necrosis was a friend of ours who passed away back in July. He worked for like every comic company, and he was an amazing letterer. And me, Ray, and Dan worked together, and it was just such a good guy.
One of his
You know,
last projects was working on the Trump Land book.
and which we'll get to tonight and talk about.
Yeah.
And but yeah, no, Dan was someone I spoke to like 2 to 3 times a week, so it was very little hard. Sometimes I still feel like, oh, I should give Dan a call. We both used to talk a lot about cooking, so when I'm making something, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Dan would love this, and then that's when it kind of hits me. Yeah, it's a little rough, but
it is. I have so many dead friends' phone numbers that I just can't bring myself to erase.
I know.
It's morbid. It's like I feel
no,
bad.
but it's just one of those things. I'll be honest, I don't even know if I still have his last voicemail. I'd have to check my phone, only because I upgraded phones since he passed. I don't know when things transferred over, if that voicemail transferred over. But yeah, anyway, let's move off the sad note. And
no, we're celebrating his life. It's not sad. He had a good life. We're happy.
He had a really good life. Big Mets fan. If you're a sports guy.
You just reminded me of a joke I told him. He said he was a diehard Trump fan and he was a diehard Mets fan. And I said, well, that makes you a 2-time loser, Dan. And he was laughing. But he was just like, screw you, Ray. He says, yeah, Mike, we were just talking about you before you walked in, Ray. So, you're fired.
Right. I'll tell a funny story too. And this, we all worked together at a summer camp, and Dan, my logo for Get in Tune, before I changed it, or as I was changing, yeah, Ray knows where I'm going. As I was changing it, he was like, you should never use your face for a logo. And the reason I was changing it is because I grew my beard and I didn't have my goatee anymore. So he drew my logo. And the art room that we used throughout the year was actually a martial arts room, so it had a lot of these dummies and stuff. And he cut out my face and he taped it to to one of the dummies, and you guys would punch it. And it was because I was the boss of the art department, and I could be a pain at times just because.
No, we were just messing with you.
Hey, listen, I didn't care. I personally didn't care. I thought it was hysterical. I cracked up laughing when Dan did it. But I knew I could be a little bit of a pain at times, just making sure that, rules were followed, just because I didn't want anyone to get in trouble.
What's your sign, by the way?
My zodiac sign?
Yeah.
Aquarius.
Okay, so that explains a lot.
My birthday's next week, man. Next Wednesday, the 10th.
Wow. So how old are you going to be? I know you're younger than me.
45.
Wow. I'm 47. Can you believe that?
I can, actually.
I can't. Most people in the Bronx who die like before age 24, so I honestly didn't think I was going to make, well, 2 things. I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, so I remember they constantly kept drilling us the end of the world is coming, the end of the world's coming. And in 1988, right before the summer of 89, they announced that the Michael Keaton Batman movie's coming out, and I was like, damn, the world's going to end. I'm not going to be able to see this movie.
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you were a Jehovah's Witness. I just want to go to the comments real quick. Mike's getting an Angry Orchard ready, which is I think his go-to.
Yeah. Good
And
stuff.
Mike Wilkie says howdy. Mike Wilkie was on my Saturday storytelling or my storytelling Saturday streams that I do last week.
Right.
We had a great time. Very funny single panel gag artist, and we did a little challenge. And I was just starting drawing a second character. He was done with his joke already, and so very talented guy.
That's cool. That's cool.
So yeah, getting back to your childhood. Let's talk a little bit about some of your comic influences. Like what were you reading, or what got you into comics?
That's a hard question. I know what got me into comic books. I have two cousins that we. My dad, he was. My cousins were older, right? So when I was in elementary school, my cousins were seniors in high school, and did you just tune out your voice?
No, I'm listening to you.
Oh,
I was just. I'm just prepping for when I'm ready to start drawing.
Oh,
so
I thought you were doing doing the sign language interpretation.
No. I was just if I get the urge to draw, everything was set up in front of me now.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
So, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So the comic book that I remember first being shown, like the very first Spider-Man, was the Cloak and Daggers, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Through my cousins, and there was another Marvel comic book, also Spider-Man. Oh, it was an X-Men, and they were like, "Who's your favorite cousin? We'll give you this comic." And they didn't give me shit, but but they were like. And this is like not a collector's market because they like rolled it like a newspaper, and they're like rolled in their back pocket. And they're like, "You want this comic book? Tell me who's your favorite cousin." And they're like, and I was like, "Oh, Spider-Man. Oh, who's Sin Eater? What's that? What's Sin Eater about?" So it's like, I was like, yeah, I like that. But then my dad was in the military, and he spent some time in Germany. And when he came back with a big. A desecration of comics. It was like a stack of Muhammad Ali comics, which I've been trying to find. I can't find those. It was based on the Saturday morning Hanna-Barbera cartoon, and which I love that cartoon. My dad was a huge Ali fan because he was a boxer. And then stacks and stacks of Carmine Infantino Flash comic books, and he was just like, "This is for you and your brother," and that was comics.
And since he got them from when he was in Germany, were they in German or were they American comics? They
were American because they're selling them on the base,
Yeah,
so you're living on the base. So
all right.
Yeah, I wish they were in German. That would be awesome.
I actually do have a few comics from other countries. Actually, quite a few I got from Dan, but I had a friend who went to. Actually, he stayed in Germany in high school. He did a like a summer in Germany, and he brought me back like Asterix and a few other comics, and they were all in German. And I'm like, this is awesome, but I don't know how to read German. And
I had Asterix in Spanish, but I think I left them in my classroom.
Oh, really? I ended up collecting from, and I went and looked. I'm like, are these in America? And I went to the comics because at that time I was only reading. I mean, I read very little Archie, but at that time that I got those, but I was more doing superheroes and mostly DC. I've always been more of a DC guy, but I was reading anything like Disney that I could find too. They had the Disney Afternoon like magazine or little digest comics or whatever, and that's what I was in. Then I got these, and I'm like, oh my god, the artwork is beautiful.
Yeah,
and I always loved that stuff. I've always said I'm a big fan of Peo, so I'm like a big Smurfs fan. I love his Benny Break Iron. I never read his outside of a few online. I've never read. He had a strip called Pussycat. It was about a black cat, I believe, with like a white stomach, if I remember the illustration correctly. I never read those, but I believe they might have some American interpretation somewhere of them.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for the Johan and Pee Wee stuff to come because those are great stories.
Johan
If
and
you have,
very cool. How about Tintin? Were you into Tintin?
I have, God, how many? I'd have to look, but I got like at least 3 Tintin books
Oh, really?
that if I take my headsets off, I can grab. I got a few. I got Lucky Luke. I don't know if you know Lucky Luke.
Mm.
He was. I think it's Belgium. Most of my influences are Belgium comics. And
Because you have like a European looking style to your art.
thank you. I think that's one of my bigger influences. And Lucky Luke was I don't know if it was done in America. I forgot the story, but they were like French or Belgium cartoonists doing their version of the American West. And it's just a great, great designs. I mean, maybe I'll pull them later. I wanna get into chatting a bit more about stuff. So you got into Spider-Man, Flash, and you're a big
Batman.
Batman,
Yeah.
but you're a big Carmine Infantino fan.
Oh yeah, I was. He was my teacher in SVA in the 90s, and then through him, then I started learning through Howard Post, and then Howard Post introduced me to Eisner, and I didn't take Eisner's class. He wanted me to. It's a very unique. It was a very weird experience. It was just like one time, and then we saw each other after, and he was just like ignore me because I didn't take his class. But it was it was like we were in an elevator on the 21st Street building, which then was the photo building. I think something else now.
Yeah.
Coming out the elevator, Eisner's coming in, and he says, "Hey, Howard, how's it going?" And then he's like, "Hey, this is Ray, blah, blah, blah." And he says, "Where are you guys going?" And he's like, he was getting ready he's going to one of the offices, and I was like, we're going to go for a smoke. He says, "Okay, I'll join you." And then Howard's like, I thought you quit. He's, "Well, the wife." So the three of us are smoking. So I'm smoking. They were smoking. I don't know what Eisner smoked. It was an odd cigarette. I don't know if it was Pall Mall or. I think Howard was smoking Newport, and I was smoking. We all had weird cigarettes. Like I was smoking clove cigarettes, but it wasn't like Marlboro or anything like that. It was like I don't remember what they were smoking, but I know they had obscure cigarettes. I mean, Newport's pretty common, but. That's like a New York thing, but I don't think he was. I remember it was either a white package or I don't know if there were lights or. I wasn't a real smoker. I became a smoker in college, but I was really like a snob smoker. So, so I only like smoked like really good cigars or like cloves or like willow bark or whatever.
Yeah.
I was an artist.
I get. You know what? I was never big on smoking, but I enjoy a cigar on occasion. If my friends and I go out and I have a nice little, I don't know, for whatever reason, celebrate something, have a nice cigar, and but that was such a handful of times. I can probably literally count how many times I smoked on one hand.
True.
I'm not into that stuff.
I remember when they just started saying that there's no smoking in buildings. They were like, "Hey, you can't bring the cigar in there." And I was trying to be a badass, and I put it out on my tongue. And I don't know how I did it. It was fine. I was like, it didn't burn. It was just disgusting.
You know what? What's funny is I can actually see you doing that.
Yeah. I was a weird kid. I was very weird. People still think I'm weird,
I think we all have that about us. But I just want to say, Roger, hi to Roger Crownover. He says hi all in the comments.
Oh, cool.
So
hi.
Who's
that? Mike Wilkie.
Mike Wilkie says howdy.
Hey, what's up, Joe Ryan? Get my magic mirror real quick.
Yeah,
I'm like, I see Roger and Michael and John and hello, magical friends. I don't know who would get that. Maybe these guys will. But
I definitely think a bunch here would. I don't know about Joe Ryan. He might be a little young for that one, but the others definitely do.
I used to love that.
Oh, that was a great show. My cousin was actually on that show when he was a little kid.
What was the song? See ya. Hope you had
Oh,
a very good time, or something like that.
something. I don't remember the song off the top of my head right now.
It was like that was like the hippie show for children. It's like
Yeah, it was like going to a pre-K class without
yeah,
having to go to pre-K. You know.
it was like the female version of the Allman Brothers. They all have coke habits behind the scenes. It's like, and they're like pre-K teachers playing with puppets and magic mirrors and taking LSD.
You definitely have an interesting take on that show.
I grew up in the Bronx. You know, we have a very slanted childhood.
Hold on, I'm getting
You know,
some
your parents
messages.
say trust no one. It's like
So let's get back to the comics for a second here. So okay, so you were drawing basically. Obviously, you were into comics. You started. When did you start drawing? Or was that something you did even before you got into comics?
I don't know if I ever told you this story. It's pretty funny. My brother was the artist in the family.
Uh-huh.
I was the writer.
Mhm.
So he'd do like these airbrush paintings, and like they still to this day they have them in his house, in my family's house. They never put up any of my artwork. So my brother painted murals all over the house, and like, with these airbrush. He was like really big into the airbrush, and so we grew up with art around the house. And like I did something, and my parents were like, "What the hell is that?" Like, you know, but my stuff was weird. It was like a latex mask of like a life mask of my face, and then I burned all my toys and then glued them onto a canvas with put real barbed wire wrapped around the canvas and hung it on the wall. Spray painted the barbed wire red. And they were like, "You're gonna cut yourself with that." So he had like the nice pictures of Puerto Rico or like outer space planets. And to this day, like the high school we graduated from, they still have his airbrush portrait, you know, in the hallways of the high school. So
That's funny.
he was immortalized. He ended up being like a nurse. So, you know, it's like,
Hey.
So we went to the same college. We both went to SVA, you know, but comics, well, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Say.
No, so I was going to say like comics. So I worked at a comic book store called Wild Comics. They were like the Midtown Comics of the Bronx in the, I guess in the 80s and the early 90s. They had like three or four stores in the Bronx. And I worked at one of the locations on the weekends. So I got everything for free. And I read everything, Marvel, DC, American. So when I first saw American Flag, that's when I first saw Watchmen. That's where I saw Black Kiss. And then eventually, when I went to SVA in college, they had a huge comic book library. And that's when I discovered Robert Crumb, you know. Well, actually, no, my friend Jeff introduced me to Robert Crumb and Ralph Bakshi movies. So, like,
Yeah.
And then the library had all this indie stuff in there. So I fell in love with it. By the time I got to college, I was totally into like Vertigo and indie books. But I read everything. I didn't discriminate. I read Wonder Woman, you know, so it's like everything.
No, I mean, before I moved into the place I live now, actually, even before I got married in 2008. I had something like 30 plus boxes. And I'm like, I can't fit these. I sold some off. I donated stuff. It was, and I'm literally down to, what is it? I'm down to like 3 or 4 boxes now. I just kept what I truly loved.
You want to see my graphic novels collection? Look at this.
Sure.
This is my art table, right? So behind me is like my Hot Toys. I have a bunch of pictures. I have so many artworks on the wall that they're on the floor now. I got it like that. I'm trying to fix the room upstairs. So I got all these little Hot Toys, an army of Hot Toys. I got some original work and some stuff on the walls, and then all those bookshelves are all graphic novels, everything.
Wow. I got
everything.
I have one full box. One of my boxes is full of graphic novels. On top of that box, I've got a pile of about maybe 20 plus. And then I literally have one full shelf. Yeah, it's like maybe 2 full shelves of graphic novels, but I also have like some of my manga on there that I read, and
Oh, you got to see my manga collection in the other room. That's the entire living room.
I could imagine. Yeah,
It's like 5 bookshelves of just manga stuff that never even came to America. It's in Japanese.
yeah. Do you read Japanese or?
I was learning when I was younger, because in
Mhm.
another life I was connected with a Japanese person,
Mhm.
and so I was learning. I was learning how to speak and everything, and then I stopped. But reading pictures, you
Yeah.
learn language through comics is a
Yeah.
visual. So most of growing up and like watching Akira and stuff,
Mhm.
when I was 12 or 13, the first bootlegs that I got of a manga was actually I was 15, was Akira.
Okay.
So when we watched Japanese manga, there was no what they call Toonami or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
or we literally like, and that we were. I was a loiterer at SVA even at the age of like a teenager. So we knew people that went there. We used to hang out there, play
Yeah.
handball. So and my brother went there. He was older than me, so uh, I remember one of his buddies was like, "Oh, you like manga? Have you heard of Akira?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, that Marvel put out this Akira series in color." I was like big on that. And
Mhm.
he hands me a videotape. He says, "This is the movie." And I watched that thing like 20 or 30 times, and it was in Japanese, no subtitles.
Yeah.
We just watched it like captively, just watched it over
Yeah.
and over again.
The
We knew the
first.
stories, we read the books.
Yeah. No. I mean, I didn't read manga probably until the late '90s, early 2000s.
Mm.
But I did watch. I watched anime, but I preferred the movies to the shows. Like growing up, I know you grew up on the same stuff, but when you grow up on shows like Battle of the Planets,
Yeah.
Speed Racer, Voltron, all
Yeah.
those things are part of my style now. I took those in, but I've always but growing up, I always tended to lean more towards the American style or that European, the um the what's it called? The
Typical,
Japanese stuff
yes.
didn't it didn't attract me in the comics at the time.
Hmm.
And but I did watch the anime, and I remember the first time I ever watched Akira, it was on the Sci-Fi Channel. It had commercials on it, obviously, but they were starting. I don't remember this sometime in the '90s. They were starting like an anime block, and the first anime movie I ever watched
Hmm.
before Akira, that was the second one, was Lensman.
I was about to say Lensman, because
I
that was
freaking
huge. I saw that in the theater at the
I
forum.
loved Lensman, and
It was like
I went
Star
out.
Wars, right?
Yeah, and I went out and I have I have a couple of the issues somewhere before.
Oh,
I
you do?
didn't know
I don't.
I didn't know that it was a manga at the time. I just thought it was a movie, and then when
Mhm.
I got into the 2000s and I started reading manga, I'm like, I wonder if Lensman is. So I looked it up, and I'm like, yeah. And I would go to like shows and look, and I found I probably have like 2 or 3 issues
Did you
of
ever make it to the film forum down in the West Village? Like they had like
no.
they played once a month manga. So I saw Ghost in the Shell there, Akira,
Yeah.
Lensman
Mhm.
was the very first Japanese movie I saw there.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think Twilight of the Cockroaches. They had a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, that blew me away. I mean, I know I saw some
Yeah.
Miyazaki films there.
Mhm.
It was like a private small theater. The film forum
Yeah.
was like an artsy theater.
Yeah, I didn't get down to the city as much when I was younger as I would have liked
Mhm.
to, and now that I live 15 minutes from it, I don't get there at all. But it's the
That's the way life is, right?
yeah. I mean,
It's like if
I
you live
loved it growing up. I loved the city. I loved going, and the only time I'd ever really get down there were for shows.
Mhm.
I didn't have time to always just kind of go down and hang out once in a while. But
Yeah, it's like
you
when I
know,
was a member of the botanical garden, I just go there for
mm,
running. I didn't really take in anything, and maybe Christmas, like the train show. That was it.
yeah. Let's just go to the comments real quick. Joe Ryan says, big fan of Bashki's animated films.
Oh yeah,
And he
man.
also
Hey, good
says
looking. Yeah.
career is a oh, that's a good one. He says Akira is a classic. I actually have a Fire and Ice poster behind me here. I don't know if you can see it.
Nice.
I
I do. Yeah.
that was obviously Frazetta, which
Yeah.
Fire and Ice is based on his art. But I had a chance to go to the Frazetta Museum. I don't know if you've ever been there. Um,
Nope.
it's in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania,
Really? Is it
and
still open? My friend lives in Stroudsburg.
I I don't know because of the pandemic if it's still open, but yeah, it was still open. We went a few years ago. We had a little family vacation down there, and there was a place like a little shopping center. And my wife and her mother are like, "Yeah, we're gonna go shopping today over there. What are you gonna do?" I said, "I'm going to the Frazetta Museum. It's a half hour from me. How am I gonna
Right. I've never
say
even
no?"
was there.
And I went in, and it's not. I don't want to say it's huge. It's like
Take
it's
my
a
house.
yeah, it's a big it's just one large room
Yeah.
with like with off their house,
Mhm.
off their house.
So it's like
And
like an
yeah,
adaptation.
yeah. Well, it's
So it's
actually
like a
not
mother daughter,
attached.
a mother daughter.
It's another. Well, no, it's not attached to the house. It's
Oh,
like
mother daughter is like
you.
a separate house in the back.
Oh yeah, okay. So you can literally, it's like what, maybe 100 feet from their front door or something,
Oh wow.
and you walk in and you just see the most beautiful work, and they have things up, and you'll see some sketches. There's a beautiful like little Superman loose sketch I saw that Frazetta did. But yeah, I actually have more. I got to take them out. I want to put them up. I'm waiting to get frames for them, but I have like actually 3 or 4 posters I left with, and I got to put them up. They're just beautiful stuff.
That's what I wanted to do when I first moved here. I was planning to convert the house into a museum. I started to, but I have tons of art. It's
Of
just
all your work or other people's?
everybody. I got everybody up here. I got lots of stuff. Nobody wants to see my stuff. I got like a whole wall of Eisner here. This is the stuff that I have displayed over here. Like, this is
Yeah.
all Eisner.
That's any of those originals, or are they prints? What are they?
Most of them are his 1977 cold press prints that he released. This guy on eBay, the guy who actually printed them, he lives in Westchester, in your town, Hartsdale. You live in Hartsdale?
No, you always think that. I don't know why you always think I'm in Hartsdale. I'm near it. I'm about 20 minutes from it.
So this guy that was in Hartsdale printed these things up. He found them in his basement. He put them up on eBay for like really cheap. I scooped them up. I tried to buy 2, and then I guess I lost the last bid. And because I did an Eisner show at the the Parks Department, Edgar Allan Poe house. They have a gallery there, so I did a show there with a lot of art, which is not even up here. I had it was basically about artists from the Bronx: Bob Kane, Bill Finger, which is a writer, but Jerry Robinson and Eisner. Those are the ones we were focusing on.
Yeah.
So we had tons of their work, tons of their prints. I have some of them are signed by Eisner. I don't think I have any originals though. I think they're all prints. But we did at the show. We had originals because I actually, and then we did the 75th anniversary of Eisner, and that we had archival prints. And then my buddy Dan Hort, he had some originals. So
wow.
So Dennis Kitchen actually, and the Eisner family gave me work on loan, and I basically brought Eisner back to the Bronx. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was really cool, man. It was like really cool. Eisner's nephew is a really cool guy. And Dennis was very helpful. And who else was Paul Levitz was very instrumental in that, and Danny Fingeroth. I'm going to do something for Eisner this year, virtual. I haven't started advertising for it, but part of Eisner Week, we're going to do something here in Stony Point, New York. We're going to do an exhibit. So I'm going to transform this space into an Eisner-only space.
That's fantastic. When is Eisner Week?
That's like the first or second week in March. Usually it's March 15th or something. This year it's a different year, but I haven't got the additional material yet.
Yeah, I don't know the date off my head.
You'll see it on Facebook.
Okay.
We already talked about it. We're going to do it. So last year I was going to do an Eisner event in Brooklyn, and that was in March is when we had the shutdown, right? So it's like I had talked to a couple that had a studio in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and we were going to set up the space, and it didn't happen.
Wow.
So I really feel like indebted. I feel that I'm paying back a penance for snubbing Eisner as a kid for saying, no, I want to take Carmen Infantino. So
yes, but Eisner, even though you didn't take his class, he's a big influence to you. It's like, I mean, I think he's an influence to most artists, but it's like he was your teacher already just by studying his art.
Let me. I learned inking from one of his students as well. So,
What was it about Eisner's work? Was it his inks that really attracted you to him, or?
You know, it's funny when I was working in the comic book store, it was there, but we were like, "Who's this guy? Who's the spirit?" No one ever said, "Hey, he's from the Bronx." You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember looking at his work and feeling like uneasy, like, "What is this? This is not superhero. Where's the action? Where's?" But you know, as you get mature, your taste gets mature.
Yeah.
And I realized once I realized he was from the Bronx, I just like, wow, I really fucked up. Because you know, you don't really meet artists from the Bronx, and
Yeah.
and he lived in Brooklyn too, you know, as a child. But it's just like, you know, just to throw Brooklyn a bone because they always like to claim him. It's like, but I mean, all his books don't say Brooklyn; they say the Bronx. So it's like, I just love his stuff. Like right now, the Punchline comic I'm working on, like the issue
Mhm.
3, I was heavily influenced by Eisner. I was just like looking at his magazines, his comics, City Life.
Mhm.
I've been teaching some of his stuff in my in the past when I was teaching comics in classes. Now I'm teaching animation.
Yeah.
But any chance I get to, even when I was working in the prison last year, we talked about Eisner, read his books. Any
Yeah.
chance I get, we just try to like put. He's a real New Yorker. He's like grit.
Mm.
He has that street grit, like Jack Kirby. You know,
Yeah.
he wasn't as tough as Jack Kirby, but it's like, but he was a very like humble guy, but he had
Mm.
that city, and his art screams New York. You know.
It does. It does. You know, when you look, and I always bring up the book Contract with God because it's like a collection
Yeah.
of other, like you can read the building by itself, but the building's part of it.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I spent a lot of time in Brooklyn growing up. My parents grew up in Brooklyn. So I'd go there to visit family, and you hear the stories. My dad was born in 41,
Mhm.
but he's the youngest of 5 kids, so he has brothers who were and sisters who were born in like the 30s, and you know, a lot of, you know, large age gap between them.
Yeah.
And you hear the stories. So for me, reading Eisner's stuff is almost like listening to my father or my uncles tell me stories.
About the city. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is just amazing stuff. But and don't get me wrong, his inks are gorgeous, and I would study his inks like crazy. I do not ink anywhere near. You see my stuff; it looks like it should belong in a cartoon or a coloring book. It doesn't. I don't ink his way.
Mhm.
But what I love about his work
Mhm.
is how beautifully he draws people. They could be the most sad, pathetic looking people, but he does that the best.
That's
Like there, you know, there's this one scene that always sticks out in my head, and I don't want to talk about what happened, but there was a little mishap, and there's a guy running out of an area, he's trying to hold up his pants and like get dressed as he's running away, and you just see the look on all that, and it's just like gorgeous, you know, and
yeah.
it's like how do you just capture that type of life in those simple lines that he did.
Exactly. I want to do a story about my life. I did
Mhm.
this thing for I took Danny Fingeroth's master class when the
Mhm.
MoCA Museum was still around, and
Yeah.
he gave us like this little assignment about why you want to write comics, and then I wrote it, and he was like, "This is great. This should be the comic." He was like we were doing comic journals,
Uh-huh.
so we were writing journals daily or
Mhm.
weekly, really, and he would read them about how we got into comics. And he was like, "This is a great story, Ray. You're a great writer.
Mhm.
Why are you doing superheroes?" He says, "This is more interesting." And I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll get to it. It's too close to the vest when I get older, you know?"
Yeah, you know, I think we all have autobiographical comics in us. I wrote one. Um, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but I had before I met my wife, I had an ex. I was engaged to be married, and that ended. But it was kind of like when we ended, it was like we were still talking about getting back together. It was like we needed space,
Right.
and then eventually we decide it was, well, actually she kind of decided that it was more along the lines of Yeah, I never wanted. I just didn't want to hurt your feelings.
Right.
So I was just kind of like saying yes to things, and I'm like,
Yes,
I
honey.
went. I'll tell you right now, I went off on her. We had a big argument, and the
No.
next day I woke up perfectly fine. Next day I was out. I was meeting girls again. It was like fine for me. It was like once I knew my life, like it was out of my system.
Right.
So I started writing this story, and it was called Starting Over: Life After Love, and it was about me getting back into the dating scene. And it ended, and to be honest, it had nothing to do with my wife, although I did write an epilogue at the end, where it's about meeting her. But the whole story ended on kind of this happy note. I may have not been with someone, but it was like, oh, there's a good feeling. And I was like, I wrote this story. I got it out of me through the writing. I never want to draw it. I have no interest in drawing it whatsoever. It's like, it was like a therapeutic type of piece for me.
Oh yeah.
And I still think it would make an awesome comic.
Mm-hmm.
I just have no interest in drawing it.
I know what you mean. I have a lot of comic books that I've drawn, finished, inked, and they're sitting right there. I have like 12, about 12 books that I've had. They're about almost a decade old that have never seen the light of day.
Yeah.
I'm trying to change that about me though.
Are you gonna turn around and publish them?
I will. My oldest series, The World Without Superheroes, I never ever published the second half. I remember getting reamed out by Rodney Ramos in the early 2000s. Like, why you want to publish this old shit? The art's not good. You're a better artist now. You should do that. And I was like,
I gotta say, that sounds like Rodney.
All right. A great guy. And then I kind of miss hanging out with him too. And then it really stuck me. I was like, yeah, he's right. Why am I? But I busted my ass from 93 to 2000. I did publish them when I was in college in black and white, like as a fanzine type of thing. But I was starting to do them in color. And it was a good thing because he set me on the path to rewrite and redraw stuff. And Black Power came out of that. The Bronx Heroes came out of that.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of funny stories with a lot of these creators. I mean, I remember he was like, he took my comic and threw it in my face, and I was like, we were at the Roadhouse, or it was a bar at 27th and 3rd where a lot of comic book guys hung out, like Marvel people. So.
Yeah.
And I remember he threw my book. He's like, "This is shit. This is amateur work." Blah blah blah. And I was like, "All right, it's amateur, but what book did you ever ink, draw, color, letter, self-distribute?"
Yeah.
He got quiet. He says, "Okay, I'm buying you a beer." He bought me beers all night. He's like, "You're right." He's like, "You're right."
Let me ask you, speaking of publishing, what was the first book that you started publishing? Was it The World Without Superheroes, or was it?
I was working on 2 books simultaneously. So I was working on a comedy. It's right here on the wall. I was working on a comedy called, and what's funny is that, no conspiracies, but I was writing, my very first published comic was through the Publishers Co-op. One of the guys you interviewed the other day was the publisher. Actually, no, that was the second book. But this is called God the Second Coming. And there's a comic book called Second Coming right now, right? So this was a story about Jesus coming back during the apocalypse of 1999. And my superhero, who was me, was Coffee Joe. And then basically it was like the return of Christ. It was like a parody.
Yeah.
Then you have G.I. American, who was like a parody of Captain America. And then you have Mocha Latte Lightning, which was a parody of Black Lightning. So, which is funny, when we did the Black Power comic, we actually redrew Mocha Latte Lightning, and Trevor Von Eden drew him. It was so like surreal. That's
awesome.
I made like this homage to Black Lightning, and then he later on draws it.
That's fantastic. What was the other, and who was the guest I had on? You got to remind me of this.
JP. JP?
Oh, yeah. I had him on a while back. I went on his stream the other night to talk about my character Dax Photon that I'm going to be doing a webcomic in. I want to release it end of spring, beginning of summer. That's the plan. I'm actually going to start drawing it very soon. I've been talking about that on and off for the last good week or so. I went online today and I did I started designing the logo online just as a stream, talk to people, whatnot. And I'm doing, and he'll be part of my storytelling Saturday this week. So I'm really going to just be showing a lot of Dax stuff. I'm really excited about that comic, the designs and everything. And this week I'll probably talk about character design because I do have a few characters to still design for the.
I feel as a cartoonist that I'm always ahead of the curve. Like when I was in SVA, I was doing A World Without Superheroes. It was influenced by the Brat Pack. I don't know if you ever read the Brat Pack. Yeah. But it's like Brat Pack Maxi Mortal. And that's before Watchmen, actually, I believe. The Brat Pack is before. And then I was also influenced by martial law, which had this whole thing about superheroes going to war and stuff. It was like this. So I wrote this story, and it's before I even read Watchmen, about superheroes in the military in the 60s and stuff. And then someone was like, hey, you should read Alan Moore when I was my first year in college. And I was like, yeah, I should. And then I read his Swamp Thing, but I never read his Watchmen. Because I don't know, Dave Gibbons' art, like I worked at the comic book store and we saw it. It was there. But it was not, it's not Jim Lee. It's not John Byrne. It's not.
I understand.
I was influenced by the colors and the composition. Now it's a brilliant piece of work, but I mean,
well, back then, I'm going to have to agree with you. It wasn't something I would have picked up at the age I was when it came out. I mean, I've always, first of all, for those who watch me regularly know, I'm a strip guy. I love looking at comic strips. When I think of who great illustrators are, and I'm talking more like superhero style stuff, I'm going back to Alex Raymond, Hal Foster, those guys who, and one of my teachers,
and all those guys.
Yeah, one of my teachers was Richard Rockwell, who most people know as Dick Rockwell, and he worked on the Steve Canyon comic strip. He was the inker on that. And when Milt Caniff passed away, who was another fantastic artist,
he took over.
He took over for the last year, finished the storyline, and ended the comic.
Was he? I think I met him. This guy that I met worked on Steve Canyon, lived in Poughkeepsie. He had a studio in Poughkeepsie.
Peekskill.
Yeah. And he actually was a court artist. He did all the famous court.
Let me tell you, okay. So this is you're gonna love this story because I don't think I've ever shared this then with you if you didn't know he was my teacher. Yeah. So I went for my bachelor's degree. I went to a school called Empire State College. It's independent study. I made my own classes up. There were some I had to take. It's where I fell in love with classical literature and writing and stuff. Before that, I had no interest in a lot of that stuff. But they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want to go into comics, animation, character design, all this stuff." So I said, "I want to." Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Little side story. Senior year of high school, I get a phone call because you get these in high school, senior year. Oh yeah, I see you're going to college. We're talking about and it was the Army, one of the military. I think it was the Army calling me, and they're like, "Yeah, would you like to sign up? We'll pay for your college, all this stuff. What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go into animation." They're like, "What?" I'm like, like drawing Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, things like that, and they hung up on me.
They're like, and I'm like, "Where?"
So they hung up on, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So anyway, getting back, I'm in my bachelor's degree now for visual art at Empire State College, and I'm like, I want to study cartooning. So they find the teachers, and the way this works is they don't actually give you grades. You go on credit.
Right.
So if you take a class that's worth 4 credits at the end of the semester, your mentor instead of teacher, we call them mentors there, will decide, did you earn 4 credits, 3 credits? And if you lose a credit, then you got to pay for it somewhere else. So I actually like that system. It pushed me to work hard.
Right.
Because I didn't want to lose my money.
I just got some major feedback there.
Oh, I'm sorry. And so anyway, I said I want to take cartoon. They found Rockwell, who was a teacher at FIT as well.
Right. That's cool.
And he taught, like, I think cartooning there maybe.
He was an amazing artist.
Oh yeah. So he's like, oh, and I grew up in a town called Mayapack, which has basically one major road called Route 6. And if you drive that for 30 minutes straight, you're in Peekskill. So he's like, why don't you come, since you're in Mayapack, why don't you just drive to my house? We'll meet there. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, do you know this location? And I said, yeah, of course. I hang out near there. Sometimes there's a movie theater over there and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I go there. And so he's like, yeah, if you make a right at this spot near there and go straight up the hill, that's where you'll find my house. So I'm not telling anybody in case his family is still living up there. I don't want them to know what part of the area, but it was a landmark I was mentioning. So anyway, I go up there and I walk in, and he's got, I don't remember the type of house where the stairs kind of go up and then stairs go down, but there's a landing in between. I'm terrible with real estate terms.
His studio?
What?
His studio, right?
Well, this was his home.
Oh, his home. Oh, okay.
This is his home. So when you look to the left, walking up the stairs, there's all imagery from the National Cartoonist Society.
Nice.
Like, original jam sessions with, you name it, Mort Walker, Charles Schultz, Sergio Aragonés. He has all these little doodles all on these like jam pages, And if you go up the stairs, I believe his kitchen was right when you come up. But he says, that's the only thing I have from my uncle. And I look, and it's this little doodle of this like kid sitting in a chair, if I remember correctly. And I noticed the signature, and it's Norman Rockwell. And I'm like, I didn't put 2 and 2 together that it was his nephew. I'm like, it's a name. It's just and that's so cool. I was like, oh. So then you go down. Then you go downstairs where his, like, he had a living room or family room, and then off to the side was a studio.
Right.
And we'd sit on the couch in like the family room, and he'd look at my work, give me advice, all that type of stuff. But going down the steps were court drawings from Jimmy Hoffa's trial.
Did you see the Central Park 5 joggers case? He did that one too.
I don't think I saw. He didn't show me a lot of that stuff. We really focused on cartooning when I was there.
He also had, I think he had the Bernard Goetz, and he had, I think it was Bernard Goetz or the Son of Sam was one of them.
I don't remember. No,
all the New York cases, like every major case in New York, he had.
Yeah, he didn't show me.
Studio, I saw that.
That the studio in the city.
I met him when he was closing his studio. Just literally, like, just bumped into him.
Yeah, I think most of that might probably been in his studio in the city, because he didn't show me a lot of that. He would show me like comic work when we were there, and maybe that's because what I was studying. I don't know. Hold on, let's see. Joe Ryan says, as I'm listening, I'm drawing my comic, and this is an aspiring stream. Joe, I'm happy you're being inspired. That's one of the reasons I love doing this, and I'm glad you're drawing, because I said this is a drink and draw, and neither Ray or I have drawn yet.
Hey! I got something here. What are you talking about? Right here. I have a page in progress right here. I woke up at 5 in the morning. I was working on this one panel here. Okay. This is like my layouts. This is
for Punchline, right?
This is Punchline number 7. Punchline Clown Detective. Okay. Not that fake Punchline from DC Comics.
One day I got to figure out how to get a censor button to be on the delay and just hit beep, beep, beep.
Well, I don't know if I told you, but because we said we're not going to talk about it, but I beat them to the punch when they shut down. When Diamond closed down, they couldn't distribute their book, but I could because I have a website.
Yeah.
So I took elements from my original script from them and I put it in there, but I didn't want to print like a DC comic book script that I submitted. So I changed it up, made her a good guy, a cop, whatever. But what's funny, the main story was when they released their Punchline, it's the same story. It's basically this drug that turns people into the Joker, which is basically what I wrote. And I actually, and I put that in my book, and my book came out 2 months before theirs.
Let me go ahead. Go ahead.
They didn't just take the character; they took the story.
Well, we are in an industry where we gotta, people gotta be careful with protecting their work properly, and maybe I'll get a copyright lawyer or something come on one day so we can discuss how to protect your work. And let me guys, I'll tell this story because I know, Ray, you own trademarks, you own copyrights. Mm-hmm. I own copyrights and trademarks as well. Mm-hmm. This is the story I'm going to tell you guys. When I was about 15, 16 years old, this is when I started learning about them. So if there's anybody young watching them, anybody old who never did, there was a show. This is an honest to God true story. My dad showed me this in the newspaper. There was a TV show I enjoyed from the Disney afternoon called Gargoyles.
I remember that.
And Gargoyles was a fantastic show. Stone by day, warriors by night. I loved it. And supposedly, and I'm saying supposedly because even though I know the story from one side, I haven't heard it from another, so I don't want to say what the real story is. But from the story I know, there was a guy who created it. He lived in Westchester. He had a partner. His partner used to work for Disney. Mm-hmm. And when and the guy wanted to sell it to Disney, the guy I know said no. And supposedly he didn't have it protected properly. And the guy took it, went to Disney. It became a show, became huge. The guy that I knew sued Disney. Disney, having more money than God, basically buried him in losing the case. And
you get a without a lawyer. That's how you get.
But you know what? When I read, my father showed me that he was reading the paper. He goes, "Oh, you got to see this article," and that's when I started learning about copyrights and trademarks. Like when I was 15, 16 years old. Now I don't know the guy who is credited for creating it. I know he drew the comic for slave labor graphics and stuff, and I have no ill will to either of them. I don't know who.
No, you weren't there.
I wasn't there. I don't know who was right, who was wrong. I'm telling you, I'm not meaning in the sense where
are you a stakeholder? You have shares in that?
No. But what I'm saying is I don't know the actual. I know it from one person's point of view because I worked with the guy.
Right.
I eventually ended up working with him, and he told me the story. Mm-hmm. But I don't know the creator, so it's like there's two sides to every story, and I'm not knocking either one of them. I'm just telling you what I was told. But and I told him I met him when I was like 23, and I said because of what happened to you in that article I read, that's why I started learning. And you guys, you need to go out if you and this is going to be one of my teachable moments. Go out, start learning. Don't trust YouTube all the time and say, I'm going to watch a YouTube video on how copyrights work or whatever, or how to protect yourself. There might be some good videos out there.
Library of Congress makes videos for YouTube.
But that's the thing. Yeah, you got to look at the right ones.
Right.
Don't just look at some random guy talking. Go to the proper ones, watch the videos, learn. There are and this is what you need to. There are books out there with pre-made contracts for artists. You can go download them and just edit them for yourself in like a Word document. Those are fantastic things for everyone. And you guys need this when you're working in the industry. You don't know how many times I've done gigs when I was just starting out and I didn't have a proper contract and I got screwed over.
Even if you have a good contract, you get screwed over. Right now, I'm having issues with the Trump land book. Because they claimed in one breath that because of COVID, they closed their offices, sales were down. Yeah. But in the next breath, in the same following sentence, is that, oh, well, all of our books sold 400% higher than usual, except yours. And I'm like, well, if you don't have the numbers, then how do you know that? Yeah. And so people lie, and they will lie. You can't tell me that you don't have the records because of COVID. You're working from home and you don't have the sales reports, but you know that the book sold 400 times everything else. Like, give me a break. I mean, honestly, I thought at my age now, that the road to go was to get a publishing company that would distribute your book on an international level was the way to go.
Mhm.
But after experiencing that, no, it's not. I say keep doing it yourself, but we have to stop going to comic shows and start going to distribution shows, meaning with other distributors. We have to be entrepreneurship, not just artists. We have to be businessmen. That's always like two hats I wore, you know.
And that's the hard thing to do. I mean, I'm lucky I can do that too. There's not a lot, there's artists out there who don't have a good business sense because they live in the creative world. And I'll be honest, I'm organized in the work I do, but like my email, if my wife didn't have access to my email account, I'd probably have 2,000 or 3,000 emails in there right now. She goes in and she cleans it up for me and keeps what's important. And I hate to say it sounds like I'm lazy, but my mind isn't there just to clean up email and look through garbage. So I'll go in at times and I'll unsubscribe I'm like, I'm not reading this newsletter anymore. And it's like, first of all, it's really nice to have her do that for me, because she'll be like,
my wife will do that.
Yeah. Well, my wife actually works as an assistant, so she's used to going into, emails and stuff, and for her bosses. And so I'm like, yeah, when you got downtime, clean up mine. I don't care.
You're not using Tinder on the down low, no.
Yeah, no, that'll never happen. But
I want to keep my balls intact. Let me show you some Eisner influence stuff here. Hold on.
Go for it.
Actually, I'm going to take off these headsets because I look like a retard, and then
hold on. I'm gonna pull something too.
All right, go ahead. Let's pull something out. Pull something. All right, so my studio is messy, so sorry about that. So I realized that, Eisner and Kirby and these guys were all influenced by the cinema, and also other comic book artists, like you mentioned, Alex Raymond and stuff.
Yeah.
So I started looking for like a lot of black and white movies on Netflix, and I love Citizen Kane. That was a movie that Kirby always cited. And French noir movies and Italian movies like Sophia Loren, black and white Italian movies. And then, of course, Eisner. So this is like some stuff that let me see if I can find an Eisner. And sometimes I'll just just if I see something that's Eisner, like if I'm looking through like the magazines, like I go through these things like crazy, like these magazines. Like, I bought a bunch of them on eBay, and that was the part of the Eisner exhibit. So that was like so like I'll just like create like that film noir, like those Italian movies. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe it's too much light.
No, I can. It's a little bright, but I can see what you're going for here.
So and then you have like the deep shadows, and Eisner captures that brilliantly. When you look at Citizen Kane, that famous Eisner window like this, but the square, that was like the opening of Citizen Kane after he was like Rosebud. It's like
I actually go ahead. I'm looking for a drawing I did that was influenced by
a lot of that stuff goes into that, that whole
it's like your inks are beautiful to me. I love looking at your inks.
I wish other people felt that way.
But you have a good and the pen that you use, that Japanese pen that you can't get anywhere but Japan, which I thought I found, and I guess not.
If you want one, I have a bunch. I was always I bought a bunch years ago to sell them, and I never sold them on my website. Like, learn how to ink the Bronx Heroes way. This is a cover so this is also like inspired. I'm a Batman fan, but this is inspired from Infantino. Classic Batman and Robin pose. This is definitely like Eisner inspired, and like, I mean, if you
totally, just the lettering alone.
The lettering. Yeah, I'm trying to like focus this. Let me see. There we go. So just the lettering, a lot of action. So I'm always like that and blaxploitation films. Like the black cinema. I hate that word blaxploitation because it's like, what I don't know. They weren't being exploited. That was their only way to get into Hollywood movies. They had to do.
Mhm.
They had to jump through hoops.
Yeah. No, I understand. And was it?
So, and then and then I used to work in Rikers Island, so,
Yeah, Angola.
so I like a lot of like things like Rikers Island, but I think I changed the name. It's not Rikers Island here.
Was that the one? Is that the story you were working on when Dan, you and I were working at the camp together? You came in one day and it's like, I'm just gonna ink today. You guys be the teachers, and I'm like, I have other responsibilities.
Yeah, now you say that, it might be. Eisner inspired. Like this is like a totally the background is Eisner. Like the guys walking in the background.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually
on the wall.
I'm gonna share my screen because that totally is, but mine's a pencil piece. I'm a big fan of Mary Poppins.
Oh, great!
And one of my favorite scenes, and actually one of my all-time favorite songs, is "Feed the Birds." Like it's one, and so I did.
We're gonna say the other one, the
I do. I like that, but if you look here, this is. I don't know if you saw it. This is on Instagram. My Instagram here, deep down from I don't know how long ago was this?
That's
here.
Cool. I like that.
And so it's. Whoa! I hit the wrong button. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a Batman in there.
Yeah, so she was singing. It's the beginning of the song. Early each day at the steps of St. Paul, the little old bird woodman comes. So it's. And I actually got a comment from someone that says Eisner-esque. Love it. But that's the thing. Like I don't think I could ink this nicely. I need someone who can ink like Eisner, but I can draw. I think I draw. It's not his style, but I think when I cartoon sad, I pull from what Eisner was doing. Because most people know me for things like this.
Cartoons really deep and heavy. It looks almost like a Francis Goya as well.
Really, this was this I did
with a Goya plate or something, like heavy.
That was a brush pen. I did a motion greeting card or something.
Wow.
So I'm never happy with my inks, but you see my pencils, I'm very happy with that.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, and this was so like.
I still have some of your stuff. I got your little Dr. Fate. I haven't put it on the wall yet, but it's gonna come. I'm trying to set up the room upstairs to be my second museum.
Really?
Display. So, I have so much original art and even some prints.
I'm just seeing if I have anything else worth showing before I remove this.
Around, that looks great.
The which one? Oh,
yeah, that looks great.
Thanks. Again, this is just basic brush pen. Yeah. Me playing around. This was all this black and white Inktober stuff. I did sell this piece though. I like this. But this is from 2017.
Is that Brunhilde, the Saturday?
No, that's just a Crazy Witch.
That's cool. She also reminds me of the one from the Merry Melodies or the Looney Tunes or something.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about there. Sorry, there's a lot of food too there. I love cooking. My favorite interpretation of Captain Hook from, I don't know if you remember the cartoon Peter Pan and the Pirates.
I never saw it. That's cool.
Tim Curry voiced Captain Hook. Yeah.
Right.
Whoops. You don't need to see that.
Hey, was that a penis?
Never is in my work.
I'm just kidding.
But I love when I draw like this. I just wish
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. That's like Tim, what's his name? The guy who did the animated series. He did when he first drew Batman. His first stats looked kind of like that.
Bruce Timm.
Yeah. Yeah, he did some sketches like that. I met Bruce Timm. It's hilarious. You want to hear my Bruce Timm story?
Yeah, go for it. I'm gonna try to find something that I really.
I met Bruce Timm at San Diego Comic-Con. Really quick,
Yeah. Let me close.
He was talking to somebody, this Asian guy. It might have been Jim Lee. I don't know. It was an Asian guy. The Asian guy looked familiar. I knew he was a cartoonist for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, "Hey, man, I love your shit. I love your work, man." I was like, "Can I get a picture with you?" He's like, "Yeah, let's take a picture." So we take like a selfie. And I was like, and then we're getting old, so my brain cross wires. I know he's Batman animated series, and then like this wire crossed in my head at the moment because I had like starstruck, which I never get Star Trek. I don't really care about celebrities, but I really got so starstruck that I got like my wires crossed. I was like, but I love something better than your Batman work, than the animated series. And he was like, what? What is it? And I was like, yeah. I said, you remember Tour of Duty when you played that soldier? And that was Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. And he was like, and I was like, yeah, man, you were awesome.
That's hysterical.
And then I walked away and I was like, what the fuck did I just say?
You ever go up to Larry Hama and say, I love your artwork. I love when you did G.I. Joe, but my favorite was you on MASH.
I saw this at MASH episode. I wanted Larry Hama to write a story for me. I told him, I'll pay you what they're paying you at G.I. Joe.
Uh-huh.
I wanted him to do like a comic book for me.
Yeah.
I have this parody on Captain America that Joe Sinnott loved. I gave Joe Sinnott a copy called G.I. American. It's up there on the wall. I'm not going to go up and get it. But I'll move the camera. I get that. You see this is the wall of fame of all the Bronx Heroes. So I gave a copy of this to Joe Sinnott when you guys did his birthday. I think it was the year before his birthday party, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It was the year before his birthday party. So these are all the Bronx Heroes comics.
We're going to get to those in a few minutes, I think.
And I wanted Larry Hama. I talked to Michael Zeck just briefly. We're online. I'm buying some prints from him. I was like, hey, man, if I get Larry Hama to write this story, would you draw the covers and maybe the interior? He said, yeah, of course. So I went to Larry. I was like, Larry, man, I just talked to Mike Zeck, and he said he's interested in doing these covers for this book, this character. And I showed him this book, and he was like, no, I only want to do G.I. Joe. That's it. I was like, come on, man. I said, I'm going to pay you your page rate. I was like,
yeah.
I said, I'm just asking for like a 5 or 10 page story. I'm not even asking for a full on comic because I write my own stories. I don't need a writer.
Yeah.
My stuff. But I just thought it would be cool because like I always loved the G.I. Joe covers.
Yeah.
Because this is like a military version of Captain America. It was World War Heroes, and his name is G.I. American. Maybe because it's G.I. American, G.I. Joe. He was like, no, I'm not touching that. But there's no G.I. Joe reference in it at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This was a book that was done as a parody in reference to my lawsuit with Marvel and DC, which we're not going to talk about. But it's because we already talked about it. And look it up on the index. It's on the microfilm. We spoke to. Yeah.
No, but we have talked about it, we'll bring it back one day. We'll talk about that another time again.
It's okay. That's like fucking 10 years old already. This is another one that I was working on. This is just pencils, but I did these model shots years ago.
Mm-hmm. Let me give you the screen.
Okay.
Let me give you so it's easier to see. There you go. It's all you now.
So I don't remember where I drew these, but there was these drawings that I found of this model that was posing. Mm-hmm. And I just did them on these pages. And my memory's. So I was just like, I want to draw this, like this kind of like coming out of the box type of thing, Mm-hmm. So I was like, this year, the pandemic has really had me self-evaluating about things I created when I was a teenager. So everything that's in the Punchline book is not just the stuff that I proposed to that story that we're not going to talk about, but but it's also this is another page I just did last night. Look at the deep shadows, like the French.
Turn it. Yeah. Very nice.
The deep shadows there.
I love the what is it? The third panel there.
Oh, this
big one. Yeah, I just love your blacks on that.
Oh, thank you. So Larry was like, no, and then this is another one. This is like an album cover within the comic book because it's
nice. I like that.
Yeah, isn't that cool? I don't know.
Yeah.
Gonna get the light off of it.
I can say it's okay. I understand. You need the light,
So this
but
is what,
that's nice stuff.
yeah. So, and actually, this design was well, I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it, but but so that's issue 7 of, and this is the cover. This is Punchline's. This is issue number 7. The other cover I showed you was number 5.
Mhm. Okay.
So this is one of the characters. So yeah, heavily influenced by, I love Hitchcock movies, and it's my Bronx accent, Hitchcock, but it's like Hitchcock movies and On the Waterfront. So during the pandemic, I literally went through everything I went through from junior high school to high school. They always say go back to the well, right? And I always thought I had the best ideas when I was younger, and I felt like go back to the well. And so I went through everything, and then a lot of characters that I created in high school, doodles that I found in sketchbooks. I was like, I'm throwing the whole kitchen sink in here. So I started putting all these characters into the Punchline Detective, the new, since I'm rewriting the script, it's not a DC story anymore.
Mhm.
And I was just like, I had all these great ideas that even like, and stuff that I sent to DC as a teenager. Like there was a character when I think I was in high school. It was either middle school or high school, probably high school. Probably my first year in high school, I sent DC this character called Anarchy. In the 80s, and years later they came out with an Anarchy, but it wasn't remotely anything like my Anarchy, but it was a villain with an Anarchy symbol on their chest. And then I ended up using that before DC came out with their Anarchy. I ended up giving it the image to this rock band in Seattle. This friend of mine from church, his brother lived in Seattle, and I ended up giving him the character. And then I don't know if the band broke up or what. We kind of lost contact.
Mhm.
But, so it was published as an album cover, and it was named King Anarchy. And then so I brought the Anarchy characters back into this story. I was like, this is the way it has to go. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, so this is
Little.
King.
Oh, really nice.
And he's like a guy in a jester suit,
Mhm.
and he
Yeah.
wears a mask, like he wears this happy face mask. And what's freaky about it, like this synchronicity. I was driving through recently, right before it was in the pandemic. I was driving through the East Village, leaving Clayton Patterson's house. And then I remember that I saw this spray painted image on the wall, and it was the same face of Anarchy. Like that was him.
Wow.
Mask. And then it wasn't the hat, but it was just the face, like that smile with the X and the squirrel eye. And it freaking hit me like it was just like time travel. Like, oh my God, that's somebody's doing something that I did. As this guy's probably a teenager, and it's like something like that's rebellious, something.
Yeah.
So it kind of like brought me back to and that's probably why I went back to the well, because I was inspired by some graffiti art while I was sitting at a red light. Somebody just did this really big face, and I was like, oh shit, that reminds me of this thing I did in high school. How cool is that?
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't use ideas, I believe we're all connected mentally, like in our dreams, like the internet is an artificial adaptation of what our brain synapses are and how we connect to each other.
Mhm.
Before, because I don't know if before internet, I remember we met our friends downtown. We didn't have cell phones.
Oh yeah.
We just like, okay, I'll meet you downtown. And then you just meet each other, It's like, or like you'd be like, I used to have like this psychic ability I felt, because it was like communication with others. We were like closer together because people couldn't relate to each other, not just with words, but through feelings and through intuition. So I think that we've lost that with the internet. The internet's replaced that. It's an artificial, it's basically like a simplified mapping of how our brain is and how like the native people were connected to the earth, right? The native people were connected to the earth. They lived with the earth. They understood the planets before, like any of these Europeans that took credit for it. Aristotle and all these guys, the Mayans and all that. And we have that as New Yorkers. We all connect with each other,
Well, it's interesting you say that, because it's like, I've always, I've felt we lost something, but just going to the explanation, like I wear glasses, right? And, I've always believed it's the people, years ago, hundreds, maybe, 1,000 years, people didn't wear glasses, or as many people, because what they have to do, they had to hunt for food. They had to be able to see.
Right.
They had to be able to see.
They didn't have I Love Lucy.
What?
They didn't have I Love Lucy.
Yeah, exactly. They had to see what berries are healthy for them or what's going to hurt them. They had to be able to see animals from a certain distance so they can hunt them.
Right.
So I think as technology, and when I'm talking technology, I'm talking cars, television, even basic stuff gets developed, we lose stuff. And so someone like me would, if we ever lost technology and had to be hunting and gathering, I would be one of the dead ones, probably. It's like I kind of
just revert, man. It's just like when I worked in Rikers Island, I saw the tools that they made, the prison tools. Like they'll take a toothbrush and make a knife out of it, or a window frame, or like like your shitty furniture from IKEA with the little fucking fake wood strips. They take that off and turn it into a blade, and they wrap it with bed sheets. And I was like, wow, these are primitive weapons. So when you're devoid of technology and you're like in a box, you go back to
you get creative.
Yeah, you get creative. I mean, I saw this guy, this student of mine. He took like 6 or 7 bars of ivory soap. And he soaked them, and he made this sculpt. This how do you say maquette? Maquette?
Maquette. Yeah.
A maquette. He made a maquette of Mickey Mouse out of ivory soap. He carved it with his hands and like a razor blade, which you're not supposed to have. And then, and his hands, and it looked like something you bought in the WB store, unpainted.
Yeah.
Like these guys are like. I was like, man, I wasted all this money in college. I should have just went to jail. I would have like had an art education in prison. But I really felt like, wow, I really don't know anything about.
Yeah.
And then also, I started posting. This is also something. This is not impressive, but it's just. I'm not trying to impress you, but this is a piece of work that I did. When I was in high school, I worked on one comic book, was never published. I've been thinking whether I should publish it or not. I think it looks like shit. But
hold on, I'm going to give you the whole thing so I can see it. Go for it.
When I was 15, 16, I started doing comic books, and I took these giant 19 by 24 pages everywhere I went in school, and I was drawing. So I also did like DC stuff, Marvel stuff, but then I wanted to write my own comic book. I wanted to kind of like what we were talking about, Franzetta. I did like this whole this is how I drew in high school. Like I was actually I was a better artist.
What happened, man? No.
I went to art school, it ruined me. So this is me before and look, I mean, I got like a freaking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels on one page. And this was the standard comic book page. It wasn't 11 by 17 back then. This is what we drew on.
Yeah, that was what size is that? That looks
by 24.
Yeah. It's funny you say that about art school. I felt when I was in college, not at Empire State because I had different teachers, but when I was stuck in a classroom, the only thing that I felt I really learned or that was a benefit for me was being around other people that I can bounce ideas off of. I felt a lot of my teachers, and this isn't negative because I have taught college, but I think it helped define how I teach.
Right.
I don't think they really taught creativity. They didn't teach you how to think like an artist. They would teach you, this is how you're supposed to see. Hold the pencil, put the thumb up, and you count the. And I'm like, dude, I was getting the proportions better before I did this. And it was like,
throw this like this way.
But I also had a friend who spent, I don't know if it was 1 semester or 2 semesters in England. And he went to art school out in England for a year. It was like a exchange student thing.
Right.
He came back and like 1,000 times better than when he left.
Right. Oh, because
And
they're just amazing, man.
it's an entirely different teaching system between the American and the European stuff. But also, if you're in Europe, you can travel and kind of see all the actual original stuff from the masters. But when you're, I feel like one of the things I know I teach when I'm teaching any type of drawing, the first thing I teach is how your arm works, how your wrist, your elbow, and your shoulder, and the type of lines that you're going to get by what you're using.
I still ink like this, though. I still ink like this, but they want you to ink like this, from the elbow.
Well, I think it depends what you're inking. But I mean, if it's working for you and you're comfortable, then I say go for it. But like, people don't understand, if you want to make large lines, you need to work from your shoulder and use broad strokes, or tighten up with your elbow and you get short until you go to your wrist. And how do you hold your pencil properly? Like, here's a pen.
It's something like this.
You're on the full. Hold on, I can't show, but whoops, I did it again. But like, you were holding it just like that. Like, you're holding it higher up. You're holding it in the middle or closer there. You're not holding it like this.
Like this, yeah.
This hurts your hand if you do this for too long. This is for writing, And I'm like, I got to teach that. I got to teach sketching. These are things I didn't have teachers teach me.
Right.
These are things
I learned that in the Art Students League,
Yeah. It's,
anything. They're smoking cigarettes. Like, what do you want, kid?
Yeah, it's not good. Not that I don't want to say that, because the stuff you can get, the meeting of professionals, your future coworkers, collaborators, there's a lot of great benefit. But I think a lot, and don't get me wrong, I taught a lot of digital classes too. But I think the world going into digital is losing what the creativity or how to think. Like I love paper. I always start on paper. I photograph, I airdrop it to my computer, and I ink digitally, or I'll even draw somewhat digitally. Like, I have this piece here that I scanned in, but it's like an elf warrior here. Okay.
Great. Yeah.
And I have this piece. I love it. I'm going to ink it very soon, but I'm going to ink it digitally. Okay. I draw on regular 8.5 by 11 paper, and I just send it over. But my Cintiq that's in front of me is a 27-inch Cintiq.
Right.
Why didn't I go smaller? Because I like to draw from my elbow and my shoulder than my wrist. I need to be able to make larger strokes. And that's the only reason I went that big. I would have rather saved $1,000 and bought a smaller one. But I know the way I draw what works for me, and people need to understand that. And it's because I know how my arm works and how I draw. We do have a question from a sister channel of mine here, Incredicon. Now,
Incredicon!
There is a comment I'm going to ask you, but if this is something that you don't think I would like you to talk about on air,
the answer is D. It's always D.
Tell us about OD. Is that a comic? That's the comic you can't. Oh, that's what I thought. So
we can talk about it.
I don't know. Is that the comic though that we were talking about earlier that we off?
Well, yeah, actually, let's talk about it, because that really led me towards the Bronx Heroes and what I'm doing.
Okay, and actually, I want to get into Bronx Heroes too, because we've already been an hour and a half here, man. So it's okay.
People still watching. That's cool. So when I got into comics, like I said, in college, like Raw, World War III, S. Clay Wilson, Robert Crumb, Spain Rodriguez, like the whole San Francisco independent scene. Like, I got totally into that. It just blew my mind. And I was like, screw Marvel and DC. So I was telling you earlier, like, I would tease like Carmen Infantino whenever they gave us like comic book assignments. They were really boring, They were like, oh, well, you're going to draw a Western, or you're going to draw a guy on a bike, or you're going to give us a situation. And it was like really stale and boring. So I was like, I'm going to draw you a porn comic. And so it's like, so Carmen Infantino used to like be like, "Hey, what's this? What's this?" And then everyone would be cracking up because everyone saw it before he got into the room. They're like, "Hey, what did you do? What did you do?" And so I do these like really graphic pornography. You know, I was a young kid. I was just discovering my sexuality. I didn't lose my virginity till I got to college, like literally like the first day. I was like,
Thank you for sharing that. I have a Get in Tune exclusive on Ray's
first
virginity.
day of college, baby. I was like, I was like,
All right, let's
like,
move on from that.
but I was like, I was like a little like church boy virgin. I went to church, grew up in the church. I was very like super conservative Republican. So anyway, so I had this. I experienced all these artists, all their crazy art, and it inspired me. So I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do underground comics. And then I was telling you like Denny O'Neil was my professor, and we used to always joke with him and tease him and stuff. And then for my final paper, I gave him a script. It was kind of stupid that he was like, everyone's writing the story, and the story's called the MacGuffin, and the MacGuffin is the main thing in the story, and we couldn't call the MacGuffin something else, which I was like, that's stupid. So I turned the MacGuffin into the perfect piece of ass that this guy was searching for. But it was like a Mad Max futuristic story, and heavy metal too. I was a big heavy metal fan growing up.
Yeah, I enjoyed heavy metal as well.
So I mean, so I wanted to do that stuff, and I wrote like he wanted to do 24-page comic strip, but I gave him more than that. I gave him like a 40 or 50-page script. And then like halfway through the script, when it hit 24 pages, he was like, this is no longer a comic book. He put a big fucking D on it. I was like, and I was like, he didn't get my jokes, It was like, he was a character too, because he would always talk about Charlie Chan movie. I mean, these really racist movies, but he was like, oh, I enjoy it. There was some theater playing Charlie Chan movies, and he was always going to see them with his wife. And this is before like Netflix and stuff. People went to the theaters. On my day, we went to the movie theaters. It's like, so he went to see all these movies. He'd always talk about Charlie Chan. He'd talk about his day. And I was a poor kid in the Bronx. I didn't have money. I was was like what, 93. So I wasn't a father yet. I think I was a father my second year. But I was broke. Like literally, I was broke. This class was like $650 or something like that for continuing ed. They're at night. I'm going there after work, and Denny is just talking about his day with his wife for an hour. The class is an hour and a half, so he either talk about something that happened in DC, or he'd criticize like John Byrne, or he criticized, the gossip, and everyone's eating it up. All the fanboys, and and it was all ages, like adult. It was an adult class where you had students and adults, but they're all eating it up. And I had to say, like, man, I paid $650 for this class. When are you going to teach us how to write? And people were like, "What's wrong with you? How could you?"
It's funny. It's funny you say, because I took a class at SVA continuing ed, and I got a funny story to tell. But you continue. But before you do,
he hated my guts after that. I mean, it was
I would imagine.
We got mad. We got sore, but after that, we ironed it out years later. But it was just he was just mad about that.
I just want to go to the comments real quick. A mutual friend of ours, Marty Grabstein, who we all know as the voice of courage, says, enjoyed watching this interview, Michael. So thank you, Marty, for watching. If you're taking off, I understand it's getting late. Do what you got to do. We'll be in touch soon.
This one's for you, Marty.
So I'm going to tell you an SVA story of mine.
Here we go.
Now, this was 1997. I was taking a continuing ed class. I think it was on a Saturday. And it was like the middle of the day, like early morning to middle of the day type of thing. It was like a 3 or 4 hour class. It was a cartooning class, but it turned out to be mostly a life drawing class. So we'd spend about a half hour, maybe, or 45 minutes at the end of the class doing like cartooning stuff, and the rest was life drawing.
Right.
And I was, I got to be honest, I was a little pissed at that because I already took life drawing in school. I knew how to do it, and I'm paying for a cartooning class, and I'm like, I'd rather do cartooning, but whatever, right?
Right.
I don't know if I should share this anymore. This might be an off-the-air story. I'm thinking of the ending now, and I don't curse on air. So you know what? I'll finish the story. Let me just say I'll just leave it at this for the audience watching, so I don't want to leave you on cliffhangers.
You just broke it up.
We had a lot of the funny thing is the comment at the end, which I won't say. I'll tell Ray off the air, but we had a lot of nude models in the class, which is what you get in life drawing classes. It's fine, guys, girls, whatever. It didn't matter. Although back then it looked like the girls that we were getting were junkies. They seemed to have like track marks in their arms. It was kind of it was kind of bad, but they probably were. I mean, back then
European girls. So there was a lot of heroin use in SVA.
But the guys, there was this one guy, Italian, like brunette version of Fabio, basically muscular, long black hair, and he's standing there. And the teacher would be like, "Okay, you're going to do a 2-minute pose." Like, can you hold the pose for 1 more minute? You know, just a little thing. Like he kept saying. So, and this guy was like elderly, like in his like definitely late 60s, early 70s, and he was kind of the short-looking guy. Mm-hmm. So the models would stand on this desk, and eventually the model flipped out at him, and he was like, 3 minutes means 3 minutes, 1 minute means 1 minute, and they're going. But what is so funny is it's this old guy looking up at this guy on a desk, and just standing right in front of his face where he's yelling is something right, you know, you get it, just something right there. And so finally the guy kicks him out of there. He's like, you know, get out of my classroom and all this stuff, and the guy leaves. And then there's a funny comment by a girl, and he's like, you guys go to lunch, I'll see you when you come back. But I will tell you the line the girl said afterwards. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought this up on air. This is what happens.
You just pulled a Seinfeld.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is what happens when I'm hanging out with like buddies and stuff. And
but actually, I was going to say that Will Eisner was Seinfeld before Seinfeld. Really? The Dreamer, or like, you know, like all his stories, like these. He had that like Curb Your Enthusiasm type of New York humor. Yeah, which is like very authentic with like the Jewish culture and the way they tell stories and stuff. That's why we had the best. You know, now comic books. I always say the reason why comic books failed is two things: the price point. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, when I pick up a comic book now, it's just like it's not good. Because we don't have those real New Yorkers that grew up with this urban grit, telling stories like the Rich Buckler and Irwin Gibson, and we don't have these. We don't have these New Yorkers that Frank Miller. You know, these are guys we lived. Jack Kirby was a fighter. You know, well, these are the guys that never got into a fight, and they're doing fight comics. It's like,
well, that's the thing. It's like listening to music. I'm a big Tom Waits fan. I don't know if you like Tom Waits. Love Tom Waits. But if you listen to his music, even though he's singing like, you know, but his lyrics, you see this guy lived a life, you know, and we're not seeing that. And I'm not, listen, I can't knock anybody who makes a living doing these jobs, whether they're mainstream, independent, because whether you're working your butt off, especially if you're an indie guy and you're making it. If you're, you know, hopefully if you're in the mainstream, you worked hard to get to that spot. So I don't knock people, but I don't have to read if I don't like what
Japan, remember that.
What?
He was big in Japan, remember that.
But what it is though, I choose not to read a lot of stuff. And some of it might even be good out today, but my experience with the mainstream books in the last, let's say 5 years, it's been longer, but 5 years,
8 years, but yeah,
has showed me that I don't want to purchase mainstream titles anymore. So even if I love Dr. Fate, I love Green Lantern, you know, if you put that, there's a new Green Lantern story, it's going to star Hal Jordan or Alan Scott, who's the original, who I love. I want to read it, but experience has taught me you're not going to give me a good story anymore.
And it's all done like Green Lantern's being written by Grant Morrison, one of my favorite writers, and
Yeah.
it's just not good.
I haven't read it. I can't tell you, but
Good.
it's
I stuck through it. I stuck through it. You know what my New Year's resolution was this
yeah.
year? To stop reading and buying new comics.
That's a good one, and I hate to say it, you know.
Stop buying mainstream stuff.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because these are characters we grew up on.
Because it's collecting out of habit more than interest.
Exactly. These are the characters that inspired us to create characters. The shows we love, the money we're going to spend on movies and in other mediums, but they're not giving us what we love in the form that we fell in love with anymore. And I'm not saying I want it to be 1980s comics. Right. I'm not saying it has to be what I loved about DC in the 90s or whatever, or I don't need to be campy Silver Age stuff, which I enjoyed, but give me a good story. That's what I'm not seeing. When you have people out there, and this will turn into a whole other rant for me, but when you have people out there who have to feel they have to push an agenda to tell a story, you failed the story already.
Yeah, I think it should come natural.
Yeah,
I write about lesbians and gays and the New York. That's part of New York, like the homeless guys. It's like Lou Reed's song, "Take a Walk on the Wild Side." I mean, that to me, that's New York. That's intrinsic with it. But what we're seeing is not New York. It's kind of like this whole other, like you said, it's like an agenda. And it's forced. It's not even natural. You know why it's not good? Because it's not like there's some really good like binary writers. That one worked for Marvel and DC. She did a book. What was it called? Postal, was it? I think it was. I forget. I'm forgetting her name. I'm a shit for forgetting her name. But she's a really good writer, and but she is what she considers as a binary. And when you read, and her stories aren't about that, it's about whatever. But even when she's writing those characters, it comes off natural. The problem is with Marvel and DC when they're like, oh, let's make this character gay. Let's make this character.
It's like they have check boxes that they need to make sure they're checking.
It's number one. It's not written by a person of that experience. I want to read the person writing it that live that, like the fuck up. Like, I don't know if you read the novel The Fuck Up, but
no, I haven't read that.
It's like you want this person to be genuine. So I don't mind those stories. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with them either.
And it has to be from that. I don't want some like old Italian guy say, okay, I'm gonna let's make this character, a transgender, right? But then he's really writing a transvestite, not a transgender. It's not from a transgender perspective. And I'm not saying that every story has to be written by a person, but do your research.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Make it authentic. It doesn't have to be a person, like we had Black Lightning and Black Panther. That's not written by black guys. If it was, it would be even better.
They weren't,
but they were authentic. They had their research, and it was like watching Black Panther was like Star Trek,
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, some of the best Black Panther I read was what's his name? Don McGregor, right? He had some of the best Black Panther, era of comics. And
because he researched. He was it was respectful. He was like, he's not just trying to make a buck.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I've been drawing black characters for 15 years. And it's funny that now there's this explosion of black character, this black character, that. It's like, I was like, wow, I just kind of like nobody, I was doing it before even people of color were doing it. I mean, excluding Milestone. But, Milestone was kind of what put me on. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then Brother Man. And I was like, why aren't people doing stuff like this? I don't know if you read Brother Man, but he had this cool Mad Magazine style of art. And then
I'll have to look at it. I sometimes I'm bad with names. I'll remember.
He was the first. He was the first independent black comic book before Milestone. 200 copies, magazine format, black and white magazines. Yeah, you can look it up. And
I'll look it
was
up,
great. It was like, whoa, a black superhero. Whoa, this looks. I felt like I was reading Mad Magazine. The art was like condensed with the people, and it had that Eisner type of situation with the people look real, the characters look real, and that stuff inspired me to want to draw black characters. And I grew up in a black neighborhood. Caribbean, Jamaican, mostly. But we learn in school, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and they don't really teach Malcolm X in school anymore. But it's like, but those are things that I read, like his journals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I find it's funny that now, ever since the Black Panther movie, there's been an explosion of black characters, and nobody's coming knocking on my door like, hey, let's make a movie out of Black Panther. Let's make a movie out of Runaway Slave. I remember people going to the convention and black guys would be like, well, what's this book? And they'll look at my comic book and say, yeah, it's a black character. It's all
talking about Black Power now.
Before Black Power, I would say like even this, like God the Second Coming, when I had the Mocha Latte Lightning, and these were like main characters, and then Black Power, then Runaway Slave before, and then Ankh, like the cyberpunk, futuristic Mad Max type of heroine in the future, in Africa in the year 2082. These are like things that I put out decades ago, but no one's knocking on my door like, hey, let's do this. It's almost like they're like, it's almost like, and like I was saying, I remember doing shows and people are like, why did you write this? It's like some people were just like confused, like, why did you write this? And they read it and they were like, that was great, but they put it off because I don't appear to be black, but I do have black roots. Actually, my grandmother was black. She's Afro, what we call Afro-Colombian, or Afro-Latino. My family does descend from slaves. I just happen to be a little bit lighter. But in America, where we colorize everything, it's like, okay, so a black artist has to be the black writer will highlight this person, or like there's a book called Black Comics where they did an index of all black comics. And the first book, they didn't have Luke Cage, they didn't have Black Panther, they didn't mention Kirby, they didn't mention, and I was like, but they put a lot of contemporary black comic book artists, and I was like, that's cool. We need more of this. We do need to highlight more black artists, black characters. But a lot of them are guys that were in the industry for a long time, and they were drawing white characters. This is a recent phenomenon that they're drawing more Afrocentric stuff, because now there's, even before Black Panther, I would say, it was like 10 years before Black Panther, it was starting to, like what the Black Comic-Con, it was getting, and the Human Bookstore, when we first started doing that stuff together with Jerry Craft, when Jerry Craft was organizing that. So there was a thirst for it, but I remember guys, like black guys in the collected comics, like look at my book, like even World Without Superheroes, I had a cover with all black heroes, and they were like, no, man, I'm going to just read X-Men. They tell you, like, I'm not interested. Like, they're just not interested. They were not interested in black characters. Not even Black Lightning. Not even Milestone. I remember Milestone did not get a ton of support. They made money. I'll give them that thing. Because that was during, like, Malcolm X, Spike Lee's movies. That was, like, a moment, and that. So there was a lot of resentment from both DC Comics, the company, and fans, and that stems down to racism. But I feel a little resentment because it's like, I'm not the right shade, and I've been doing it longer than a lot of other people. Because I was like, wait a second, they put out these books, like an index of black independent comic book creators, and I'm not even included in this. I mean, technically, I'm Latino. I don't speak Spanish, but I have black roots. So I mean.
No, hey, I get it. It's
what I mean? It's like, imagine they come out a book of Italian artists, Italian American independent artists, and they didn't include you, and then you're like, hey, all these people that like they had like artists in there that were just like pinup artists that don't even draw comics.
Yeah,
like you'll see them at the shows just drawing pinups. They never did a book in their life.
Yeah.
I was like, I feel kind of snubbed. I mean, I don't care. But I think I think there is a need for that. And I think
Yeah.
it's great that Black Panther came out to
Mhm.
bring awareness to that. But what I hate is when people come up to my book now. I mean, I think that did great for my business because now my books sell. Like
Yeah.
Black Power is a great character. It's based on influenced by Muhammad Ali and the Black Panther Party, the
Mhm.
real Black Panther, the Black Panther Party. But I think that people look at my book now and they're like, "Oh, this is Black Panther." I was like, "No, motherfucker, it's not Black Panther.
Sorry, I
It's
thought
Black Power. Don't you understand?" You know. And you'll be surprised how many New Yorkers, don't know anything about the Black Power movement. They're African American, like they never even heard of it, especially young people. But then that's because they don't teach it in school. They'll get that in college, maybe. We've become this sanitized society. Well, we don't celebrate revolutionaries like Huey P. Newton or Bobby Seale or Freddie. I forget his last name now, but yeah, it's like we don't celebrate, Mamiya. We don't celebrate. There's people that don't even know who Mamiya is. It's like, whoa, what happened to America?
Well, you can't. I work in a school system like you have, but you're at a different level, obviously. With what I work with, you see a little bit more. But from what I've seen is like what we were talking about with the entertainment of agendas and stuff. Things are getting removed, so I think the way I'm seeing it, and I'm not I don't want to say I'm not a professional educator. I'm not a licensed teacher. I'm a professional educator.
You've been doing it for 20 years. I mean,
I'm a professional educator. I've taught college. I do things, but I'm not a licensed teacher in the sense where I can do K through 12
Did Plato have a license? Did Jesus have a license?
I'm not knocking you. Listen.
Aristotle have a license?
Do you know how many times my wife says to me, "Jesus Christ," and I tell her, "No, it's Michael Gracia," but I can see how you get us confused. It's the beard, but but seriously, it's.
Scream, Rob.
I see things being removed or not focused on for whether it's for reasons of feelings, because that now we focus on the feelings for kids and making sure that they're there's no issues, like I don't want to go into because I can go into a rant of and I don't know if anyone from my school
is watching. God forbid we're in a war because everyone will be like this when they're getting attacked by the enemy. I'm getting attacked. I'm going to do a Facebook Live video. Look, I'm being shot. I'm dying. I'm dying. It's gonna be that's the next American war, bro.
Yeah,
we're gonna be like the Saudis dropping their guns and surrendering in like 20 minutes. But what I was trying to say is that as a nation in America, the people that matter we don't focus on, like Fred Hampton and Angela Davis, people that really made and developed this country and made a movement. Like even John Lennon, we just talk about his music. We don't talk about his revolutionary side. And it's a divide and conquer tactic that the media uses. And you see it every day in the news. I was not a Trump fan, but I did like his commentary on news being fake because it's manipulative. And what he was doing, what Fox News was doing, CNN, MSNBC, they all do it. It's the same thing,
Yeah.
Like with GameStop, with this whole crazy thing about GameStop, every news channel talked about that the Reddit guys, the Wall Street bets guys were leaving GameStop to go to silver. Every channel, Sky News, every channel, Al Jazeera, everyone talked about that. Do you know that was a lie? Because I follow Wall Street bets, and that was a lie. It was a total lie.
Really?
But they wanted to, because of this whole Robin Hood thing, and they sold more stock than that existed, and then they were going bankrupt. The owner of Robin Hood owns a lot of silver You know, the company that owns Robinson. So they basically are trying to recoup money from these millennials, right? That are like Wall Street millennials that are like making all this money off of them and screwing them and bankrupting their hedge funds. So they made up this lie, and every media channel, left wing, right wing, went with it about. And then guess what? GameStop plunged.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is fake news, and not because Trump said so. I always knew that. But it's always, you can't really believe everything that you see on TV. I remember my uncles telling me that. Don't believe everything you see on TV. And they weren't talking about fictional TV channels. They were talking about the news.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, let's say, since you brought Trump up, you mentioned earlier your book, Bronx Heroes in Trump Land.
Yeah.
You had that with a publisher.
Yeah.
Are you planning to do a second one, or because he's no longer around?
No, I'm going to do a second one with Biden because Biden wasn't in our first book.
Okay.
And I would have started it already, but I'm trying to finish Punchline and
so is it going to be Bronx Heroes in Biden Land now, or?
No, well, I don't want to give away the title, but it's
okay.
But it's going to be Bronx Heroes in Trump, blah blah blah. 2, because actually the first book was issue 0, so this is going to be issue 1.
All right.
And I don't know if we're going to go with the publisher because I pitched it to them. They didn't even respond to it.
Wow.
So I don't know. Their loss. I mean, honestly, I think I'm going to, what I've been doing to get that book sale? They didn't focus on, because they're a Canadian company. They focus everything Canada overseas. So, and, make sure, and if you write a contract with a publishing company, that they have money to invest it in promoting your book. Like they usually have like an American promoter, and it's not to their fault that their American promoter was a Trump supporter, so they basically refused to promote our book. That's not their fault. But
but is that allowed? I mean, you have a contract with the company; they work for the company, even if
I don't care. It's like but then they should have went with somebody else to promote it, and they didn't. But in our contract, we had $10,000 that was supposed to be sent on promotions. Originally, we were going to go to San Diego to promote the book. I wanted to promote with billboards. Of course, everything shut down in COVID. Again, it's not the publisher's fault.
Yeah.
Still, the book is theirs for 5 years, and they have to spend $10,000 according to our contract on promoting the book, and they haven't. I've been calling comic book stores and talking to comic book store owners, which was actually a really amazing experience because I said outside of New York, comics look like it's dead in the tri-state area, but people are crazy about comic. Like in Chicago, there's like one store has 12 locations. And then one in California and one in Texas. And I was like, so comics are really thriving outside of New York. And I think it's because a lot of New Yorkers just don't read like they used to, the young people.
Yeah, it's said. I mean, what was it? Was it 2 years ago? What was it? St. Mark's closed down. And like, I remember going, but I'm just saying, stores close. And I don't buy my books in the city anymore. But when I did, how many comic shops are left in Manhattan that were like, when you like, okay, I didn't go to St. Mark's often, but I used to go there quite a bit when I would hang out in the city, and it was.
What was his name? Peter or Norman? I forget the name.
Honestly, I don't. It's been years since I've been there.
I forgot. Every time I was a kid at 12, all the way till I was in my 40s, the guy would follow me around the store. And I was just like, I was like Paul or Peter, whatever his name was. Yeah. And I had to just look at him. I was like, you used to sell my book here. Don't you know that? Like, why are you following me? Like, if a kid with holy jeans, I get it. Yeah, he might steal something. Yeah. But I'm an adult. Sometimes I'm wearing this. And he was just like walking, follow me. Like, he looked like Woody Allen following me, very awkward. It's like, I'm not going to take anything. Can you just like go to the corner and sit by the register or, a very uncomfortable experience.
I never had that issue when I was there, but but it's been,
You know?
I don't remember the last time I was in that store. But what I was saying is that, like, stores closed down. Stores aren't doing well. They're going to. Excuse me for a second. Sorry.
That's okay. I burped like 8 times already.
We're going to obviously things like Barnes and Noble, people buying stuff on Amazon. I'd rather go to my local comic shop, which I've promoted on here, the Spider's Web, located at 887A Yonkers Avenue in Yonkers, New York.
Oh,
It's what?
You live close to there?
I am about a good 10-15 minute drive from there.
Okay.
And
sorry, zip code. That's a nice. I'm going to your house.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm not letting no one know where I live. But what I'm saying is that is my local shop. That's where I prefer to buy my books. But that doesn't mean that I haven't purchased. Sometimes I buy at other stores because I do business with the other stores as well. I'm going in, doing a signing or drawing for them or whatever, and it's kind of like a good faith purchase for the most part. And I'll go to other places, but you can go online and buy a lot of this stuff half price. I was walking around Barnes and Nobles the other day just to get ideas. My wife and I needed to get out of the house. We stopped by Barnes and Nobles just to kind of walk around, and I'm looking at something. I'm like, oh, this looks like an interesting book. And it was in the graphic novel section, and the cover price was like $50. It was a hardcover book. It was really nice. I'm like, let me just see what this is on Amazon. $30 on Amazon.
So it was,
and I'm like,
less.
It was less. It was $20 less.
Yeah,
why?
Rip off.
But Barnes & Noble was selling it at the cover price. If I have Amazon Prime, why am I going to go to a store like Barnes & Noble's and spend $50 when I can just say, you know what, I can have it in 2 days if I go and spend $30.
Yeah.
And and I feel bad doing that because I want the brick and mortar stores to succeed. But
because of everything's made in China or everything's published in Mexico or Canada, Americans are addicted to cheap labor. We're anti-union. We're pro-fascist. We're like, let's say Trump had successfully blocked China with this embargo. Like, let's say he was elected another 4 years, and that would be really bad for this country because there'd be no more 99-cent stores. There are hardly any. Five Below became $5 and $10 below. People are addicted to cheap stuff. There's no reason why we get fruit from Guatemala when we used to have fruit right in California. But it's the growth of corn and big corn industries and subsidies for farmers and all that stuff. And we basically, the corporations destroyed this country by outsourcing things that we used to do here, build things here, made in America, because they didn't want unions. They didn't want people to have work protections. They didn't want people to have a livable wage. It's like, and that was like 40 years ago, and they were still talking about that stuff today. It's like,
well, let's move on though, because we hit the 2-hour mark and we haven't even talked about the conventions yet.
Oh man!
And I want to, you've done a few conventions, and that you've run. Your biggest one is the Bronx Heroes Con. You've also created the show Women in Comics. Can you talk about how you developed Bronx Heroes Con and then about Women in Comics?
And then there was White Plains Comic Con, which they later changed the name to something else. I don't remember.
I don't remember. I was supposed to do it this year. I know that, but COVID happened.
Yeah, so I was a consultant for them with Nancy Silbercleat. So I worked on the first two, and then after that, I was just too busy. But they run it themselves. They run it like a well-oiled machine. They ran it better than They always ran it, but I basically kind of like coached them, organized the artists, got the talent. But they were the nuts and bolts. So it's not my show, but I was paid to basically put together a show.
It's a nice show. I've done it a couple of
It's a
times.
nice show. I do like it.
But this was going to be the first year I was invited as a guest. I was getting a nice spot, and
Very cool. I don't like the food court thing so much personally. I think it was better when it was in I'm a library parks department type of person. I believe in, like, you know, the difference between me and other comic conventions, I will tell you, and even as a comic book publisher, was that I was able to get state funding, funding from Bloomberg, you know, like the Bronx Council on the Arts, New York Council on the Arts, different grants, small business grants, which most comic book people don't do. Most comic book people are either fans or former comic book stores. Everything's out of pocket, you know. My Comic Cons were paid by the state of New York. How many people can say that? Not many. You know, and we negotiated free spaces, doing community outreach, like in libraries, museums, like the Bronx Library, the Bronx Museum, like a Poe Park. We did a lot of like art gallery shows, and also Andrew Freeman Home. I'm a community-based guy. You know, we do a lot of events in the parks. And I think that's the difference between, I never charged for my Comic-Con. I could have been like a rich guy doing Comic-Cons, and I could have done that, like rent out Lehman College for $7,000 and do a giant convention and charge people $30 at the door. But I grew up in the Bronx. The Bronx is the lowest paid. They're even lower than Florida. People in the Bronx make less money than people in Florida. Hard to imagine. The annual average salary is between $16,000 a year to $38 something a year. I mean, it's changing demographically, but when I started doing the cons, people don't have money. I mean, we have as many sicknesses in the Bronx with asthma and poverty as Mexico does. You know, we have higher single mothers and birth rates and teenage pregnancies. So it's like, why would I bring a show to make tons of money in a community that is suffering from illiteracy, lack of outreach programs? So I'm more like the Mother Teresa of Comic-Cons. It's like, and those are my people, man. I grew up in the Bronx. You know, I lived in the Bronx most of my life, but I haven't lived in the Bronx for 5 years. It's my 5th year living in the Bronx.
Wow.
Out of my whole life. So those are my people. That's where I grew up. And I was like, I'm not going to charge them. I mean, I charged the artist, but I mean, and then some artists I didn't charge. I mean, we gave a lot of tables for free. It was a community-based organization. I didn't profit off of anything. Everything that I made went back into advertising, like whether it was through like local radio stations like Fordham University, they advertise our shows, or like what was it? This advertising company, Titan, did our banners in Manhattan. We did street banners, radio spots, BronxNet Television. Again, more community outreach, working with the colleges, Lehman College. And then, you know, you and I worked with Alex Simmons and the Bronx Community College. So that's, and for me, I think that going back to, we were talking about adult comic books, what led me from doing adult comic books, from being like this horny like 20-something-year-old juvenile, to being more like a family-orientated comic convention, was just going back to my roots. You know, I kind of grew up in a conservative family, and I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm religious or, but I'm spiritual. And working in the prisons, you know, when I first became a teacher, I worked in prisons for almost 10 years. Like, I worked in Rikers for 2.5 years. I worked for the Department of Probation for a number of years, like 5 or 6 years. I worked in juvenile justice for a long time. And then it was my last job in juvenile justice, before going into the high school system, regular high schools, that broke my heart, because there was young girls that were, you know, off the streets. A lot of them were prostitutes. A lot of these girls were underage, working in strip clubs. You know, they had problems, drug problems, crime problems. You know, that was at Good Shepherd, Euphrasia House on 17th Street, and that really kind of woke me up. I was like, wow, I don't want, I didn't want to be a part of the problem, like a pornography comics. For me, it was like a joke. It was humor. It was like Mad Magazine with a little edge to it. But
Mhm.
I didn't want to contribute to that. I don't want to be a part of that anymore because I saw these how broken. It's not just for adults. Kids get their hands on it too. You have
Yeah.
sexual abuse. You have all these other not so pretty things. When you're in college, it's funny. You're having a good time. I wasn't a frat boy or anything like that, but you know, I was like a nerdy art student, just drawing. My expressions, how I felt. My experience. But as I got older in my 30s and I saw like how broken these things affect our society and how even more so like with Pornhub and all these other websites with the internet saturating, our children fall victim to these things and to people. And I was just like, I changed. I was like, I need to do, and I still do Super War Without Superheroes. It's a mature themed comic, but it's not pornographic. It's just,
Yeah, there's not. I've always said there's nothing wrong with really any subject as long as you're not hurting yourself or someone else.
right.
And
Yeah.
I, as a rule, and I told this story on air the other day, and I'll tell you because I don't know if I ever told you why I do family friendly stuff. It's not that that's all I watch. I watch basically I watch anything but horror.
Right. Right.
I like a good suspense type of thing, mysteries, action stories. I'll watch out anything. But the reason I do tend to lean towards humor, I lean towards kid-friendly, family-friendly work, is because when I was 8 years old, I had to spend a week in a hospital. It was when we found out I had my kidney disease. It was a lot of stuff going on, but I didn't know I was going for tests every day. I didn't know what was going on. I was a scared kid. So, but that's when I got my first Mad magazine. That's where I was introduced to Sergio Aragones and all the rest of everyone in Mad. I got art supplies. I mean, I was drawing before it, but they knew I liked that stuff. So art was an escape for me, and cartooning was making comics, reading that stuff would make me laugh and make me forget whatever problems I have. So when I create, I don't want to say I'm creating for the 8-year-old Michael who was scared in the hospital, but I want to create for that scared kid in the hospital that needs that moment, or it doesn't even have to be in the hospital, just a person, a child who needs an escape from whatever their issues are, whether it's fear because they have medical stuff or whatever's going on in their lives. That's why I tend to lean towards family friendly. That's why I lean towards doing work for kids. About a year or two before the pandemic, because I have my medical issues, as I mentioned, I'm on other streams. I'm a 2-time kidney transplant recipient. I used to go to hospitals quite regularly. Maybe
like the boy in the bubble, was that?
Well, no, I'm not talking about for me. No, I'd actually go into the hospitals and like work with kids and teach them how to draw or just sit and draw with them. And these are kids who I'd have to go in with masks and gloves sometimes. And I ended up getting nervous at the end of the day for my health. That's why I stopped.
Did you ever do the Ronald McDonald House thing?
I never went to the Ronald McDonald House stuff. I'd love to do that. But I'd go to local hospitals around here, and usually I was ending up in like cancer wards and kids who could never leave. And I remember I did one, and this kid just kept asking me to come back like throughout the day because he just enjoyed having some. He read comics, he watched stuff. We were talking about Marvel movies, we were talking about all this stuff, and he just had a great time. So before I left for that day, I had to go back in and spend another like 20 minutes with the kid. And it just goes to show that there are people out there who don't have, and I don't want to use the word fear, but they're stuck in a situation that they didn't choose to be in. He didn't choose to have cancer. I didn't choose to have a kidney disease. It's just something that we were born with, and we have to make the best of it. But when you're in the hospital for as long as someone like he is, or whatever, you only have your family, especially at that age. Your friends aren't coming to see you. You have your family, and your parents are there probably daily, but brothers, sisters, cousins, who are you really out there. Your friends become other people in the ward who have the same stuff as you. You're friendly with nurses and doctors and things, but you don't have those outlets. You don't have someone who is out there not experiencing the same stuff you are to chat with. And that was one of the greatest times, going to these hospitals for me. I mean, I used to go, if I went 5 to 6 times a year, that would be about average for me. And I'd do it every few months. And I enjoyed it. I didn't get paid for it. It was all volunteer. But after my second transplant, which I had in 2011, I got a little nervous, more what's the word I'm looking for? A little more careful with when I'm around things. And so about maybe 2-3 years ago, I kind of stopped. I kind of, if I go, not now, but when everything's better, if I go again, I'll be masked up again. I'll do whatever, but I probably wouldn't do it as much.
Was that because you were like teaching the kids how to play dice and cards and stuff like that?
No, I wouldn't go as much because of my health reasons, dude. But
say CeeLo.
But yeah, if kids want to learn, where is it? Where'd I throw it?
I think I threw it back there. We're to do what we do because we care, and we're and we get old, and I want to get into politics at some point, and maybe run for some local office,
I thought about that too once, and I said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that guy.
No, I think that's my evolution. I think I want to do that.
Well, I think knowing
heroes, make change happen.
Yeah. It works for you and your personality. I'm social when I'm with people, but I'm a very quiet. I like to be alone with my thoughts. I don't like to be in the public eye as much.
That means you're going to start your own Zen Buddhist religion. Like that.
Go for it. Michael does mean one who is like the Lord. So
I can see Guru Gracia. Namaste.
Guru Gracia. That's right.
Teaching yoga.
Mike Lopez is in the comics and says, "You have my vote, Ray."
All right, cool.
I gotta hear your opinions on the issues at the time before I make my decision. But
yeah, no, I honestly think that we need another. In this country, we have these two parties, and you see what's happening in politics because we only have two. We don't really live in a real democracy. And people say, "Oh, well, we live in a republic, not a democracy." Well, we don't even live in a real republic. We live in almost like an autocracy. It's like, and it's like we need to have more choices. We have the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, but we don't even see those because the media is so controlling that we only see these two choices. And it's literally divided our country where people are, it's almost like, like how science was like the new religion with psychology. It's like politics is the new religion because of the media. And it's like, so it's almost like, how far are we before we start getting tattoos of our arm of our political parties?
I'm sure that's going on.
The IRA and the, and British Parliament, it's like, like terror cells and things like that. We're the most, and it's getting crazy. We need more people. The government doesn't represent us. It doesn't matter on what side of the aisle you sit. They really represent the 1%, the billionaires, the rich. I mean, this whole thing with GameStop and this whole thing about all this stuff going on is proof of that. They're like, it's like, why do we have to bail out billionaires during a pandemic with taxpayer money when these guys don't even pay taxes? None of them. Not a one. So why do they get our money that we work for every week, every check that we make? Why are they entitled to that money? And at the end of the pandemic, whether it's 21, 2022, 2023, whenever, they're still billionaires at the end of the day. Meanwhile, we're dying, we're suffering, we're struggling, we're trying to pay our rent. And those are why are our tax dollars going to foreign nations to pay for obscure stuff, which I'm not going to even get into, but But things like that, and it's just like that's our money. Why do we pay for gas, and why is gas different in every neighborhood?
Mhm.
Why are we paying tax? Gas is already taxed. That should just be free. Why are we paying for? Why are we paying for railroad? Why are we paying? Our taxes already pay for that. So technically, we should be riding for free on the subways and to work. Especially if you're an educator. I see firefighters ride the trains for free. Cops ride the trains for free. If you work for the MTA or your sanitation, you ride the train for free. So why is it that you're a teacher, you got to pay?
Well, Ray, that sounds a little more personal.
No, but I'm just saying in general, like if you're a city or state worker, you shouldn't have to pay for those things. Or if you're a federal worker, there's certain things that you shouldn't pay for because your taxes are paying for them.
I understand.
Just like the Black Lives Matter thing. Police officers' salaries are paid by our taxes. They work for us, but they don't represent us. And that's things like that. So,
all right,
that's why I want to get into politics.
You just convinced me. You got my vote. Let's move on from politics. I keep this show. I try to at least keep this show political.
No, but I'm not for any party or anything like that. I'm not saying red or blue. I don't think that people should hate people who voted for Trump or people who hated for Biden. You only got two choices: it's either Coke or Pepsi. So why hate each other? Yeah, it's like
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? You gotta vote for somebody. It's like
now
we gotta be adults about our politics.
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to that, Ed. Let's move on. But
Bronx Heroes in Trump land on this website right there.
Yes, make sure you guys go to his website, go to his shop, buy his books. But he's leaving the show already? What? It's only been 2 hours and 20 minutes. Where are you going?
I was just going to show you the book. This is by Arsenal Pope Press that was very generous in publishing this book.
And just since that's up on the screen, since that's up on the screen, and we mentioned Dan earlier, Dan did work on the
title.
On the title, Dan was one of the most amazing letterers you would ever see.
Yeah. And he did some coloring in this book too.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was good. Wasn't the best, but it was good.
I just want to ask. I don't know if I'm remembering correctly. With the title, we were talking about, because I remember we were talking about the title at work.
Walt Disney.
We were talking about Alice in Wonderland and how and we looked at that stuff and I like how Dan captured that, but I don't know if the stuff in the boxes were my idea or Dan's idea. I don't remember that.
No, I think that.
I'm not taking credit for anything. I'm just saying
that was an actual Disneyland sign. The boxes.
I think you and I looked it up and I showed, and then Dan just created it. Yeah.
It was black and white. It was a white. There were white boxes, and then we talked about Monsters Inc. and stuff like that. Yeah. Doors. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
I remember that was a fun time. But let's
Punchline Detective. This is the noir edition. It's in black and white. It will be in color in the future after I do my Kickstarter when I get time to.
All right. Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about Kickstarter, but we're probably going to end soon. But before we go, we talked about Bronx Heroes Comic-Con and how you got that started. Let's talk about. Did you finish the whole bottle? Oh, you still have more. Don't worry. I thought you finished it on the.
No, I had a big.
Yeah.
Like that, like an inch.
What? Let's talk about women in comics. That's something else you founded. How did that come to be? And when did it start?
I think that was 2010 or 2012. My old partner and I, my assistant Vanessa and I came up with the concept we wanted to do an all women's panel, and it was our third year in the Bronx Museum. Our third year, we went to the Bronx Museum from Hostos College, but we couldn't do it because I was running the show. We were doing a blood drive. We were doing Bronx Hero Saves Lives. She was doing the blood drive. So then I went to Regine Sawyer and asked her to moderate the panel. We got all these great female artists like Rika Takashima, the Japanese manga artist. We got Alethea E. Martinez. We got a whole bunch of Sarah Woolley. There was a whole bunch of them. So many, and then it grew from there. So we did gallery shows from there. So I started as a panel, and Regina was a good shoe-in. It fit, so it worked. So then she started moderating. As each year we did a Bronx Heroes Comic Con, we had a Women in Comics panel. Then we did a Women in Comics gallery show at the parks. We had three, I believe, 3 Women in Comics Con panels. And then in the third year, I turned over the reins to Regine for a bit because I was going through some personal stuff, and I needed to I didn't have time. I was kind of running a con by myself, for the last 3 years, from tables to literally like physically moving tables and taking them out of my storage and driving them to the place and setting up things. And then Bronx Heroes Con, before Bronx Heroes, I was Cup of Java Studio. And then, in taxes, you could, as a new business, you can only file, I think you only get like tax credits. So I think it's for the first 5 years or something like that. So then I went from Cup of Java Studios, I became Bronx Heroes. Bronx Heroes then, and then in our 5th or 6th year, I said, okay, well, so now we're Women in Comics. So we had to change the business format because, we're not a profitable, I was on the way to making it a not-for-profit. But then when I got my board members, they ruled against me. They wanted to make it for-profit. And then the board members dissolved because we didn't really see eye to eye on that. I didn't want a for-profit business, which sounds kind of stupid, but I'm a teacher. I got a salary. I don't want to say I'm anti-business or anti-money, but I really wanted to maintain a free convention. So Women in Comics, so it became Bronx Heroes Comic Con presents Women in Comics. And then when Regine took it over in the 3rd year, she took it out the Bronx, brought it to Queens, or Brooklyn, to Brooklyn Library. And then she did other things too. So we kind of like, instead of just me doing stuff, she kind of took it another direction and boosted it up. So it got it was like a rocket going up, and then it blew up bigger. So to her credit, she did a lot in building it, and we were co-partners for a bit. But now it seems like, I don't know, we don't talk or communicate that much to each other, and nothing bad blood or anything. It's just busy. We're just, life is COVID, and so I told her during the last show in Queens, it wasn't a big turnout. I really don't like, I don't like partnering with people that don't really promote things, and that was one of the reasons why I left the Bronx Museum. They were great with providing space, which most museums will do, but they don't really get into really promoting for the community. They're a museum. They're kind of like snobs. So the Queens Museum, I felt, was very snobbish. They were friendly. They gave us space, but they didn't really help promote. They didn't really come up with their end of promoting like they said they would. And I was just like, I felt personally, I just felt like the last show was kind of like a failure because artists were upset. They wanted refunds because they didn't get the crowd that they wanted. And I was just like, I just communicated to Regine 2 years ago that I think we need to bring it back to the Bronx, bring it back to its roots, bring it back to its home. Most of the artists were from the Bronx anyway, and they were commuting to Brooklyn or commuting to, and then, you ever try to do a show like, and carry a lot of stuff like, it's on the train. It's like, and then we were supposed to do, so she was doing 2 more shows, one at New York Public Library, which was supposed to be amazing. I mean, she is a great talent for scouting places. At the New York, where the Ghostbusters movie, with the New York Public Library, Bryant Park, we're supposed to have one there. It didn't happen because of COVID. And then there was another place that she had lined up, but they fell through because of COVID and what have you. So to no one's fault, just shit happens. So I just feel like it's time is 2021. I said I want to bring it back to the Bronx, and both. I want to bring back the Bronx Heroes as its own Comic-Con, and I want to bring back Women in Comics as its own Comic-Con, or even getting a space where we could do both at the same day, at the same time, like Um, and I just want to bring it back to the Bronx community. That was the only Comic-Con that they had for everybody. Alex has his con for kids, but that's really like that's a great con too. I think he's the first Comic-Con in the Bronx. I think so. I'm not sure, but I think he is. And then my Comic-Con was really for everybody, like, not just for kids and teens, but all ages. And the women in comics, because I had a daughter that was autistic at the time, I wanted to, as a parent, when you become a parent, you become worried about children and how they're going to be grown up. And so I really wanted to, and since she's disabled, she's autistic. So I really wanted to, and then working at the ACS home with those girls that I told you about, I really felt that women, as a teacher in New York City, that women had the real talent for comic book inking and drawing and storytelling, and guys are kind of like, we're like stuck in this superhero niche, or a detective niche, or like, we have our little genres that we're stuck in.
Yeah.
But women bring a whole nother fresh perspective, and I really felt that we had to highlight women in the comic book industry, in the entertainment industry, and I think that Regina and I were able to accomplish that in a great number of ways. But I want to continue it post-COVID. It's time to move on.
Yeah.
It's dangerous to do shows in person, but I'm hoping if enough vaccinations get out there that we can actually start doing shows socially distanced and virtual. And I kind of think I went to this show, which I'm not going to mention what show it was, but I went to the show where everybody, the guests, had cameras and they had like a screen in front of them. I'm not going to try to promote this show, but it was actually before COVID, but it was one of the coolest conventions I ever went to, because a lot of the celebrities, there was a lot of people there, people that signed, they had lines for signings and stuff. But it was the only convention that I saw in New Jersey where the celebrities had computers and they were kind of live feeding like we're doing with their fans, and their fans were buying their art and buying their poster prints and all that stuff. And I think this is COVID has brought out this very unique opportunity to explore that. So I'm going to look into like getting technology grants or trying to get for those, like doing panels with it's not hard to get a TV. You walk into Walmart, you can get a 65-inch TV for like $400 or $500. But like having a screen set up where you're having a people in the audience socially distanced, and then you have people in person and via internet, Zoom, what have you.
Yeah.
I think that I really saw that as the future. Just like I saw as an educator, I was like, I told a bunch of teachers one time, they laughed at me. I said, the future of education is really homeschooling. And they laughed. They totally laughed. Yeah. And I was like, the YouTube, you learn more on YouTube than you'll learn in any school.
It's funny you say that. Let me just share this. I used to do some online teaching for an art college a few years, maybe a good 8-10 years ago, something like that. And I saw that we weren't doing it with streaming, but we were, online, here's your lessons, and I'd be there to answer questions through typing stuff out and whatever. But I saw this was the future of education. And when all this stuff happened, I've used the district I'm in. I don't know if all districts are like that. We're using Microsoft Teams. All right. Now, I've used Teams as a freelancer professionally. So I knew how to get around Teams. When I had to learn the educational side, I literally picked it up in like 20 minutes, because there's not too much difference, just a few little difference of things. And every other teacher outside of like 2 in the school I'm currently in were having issues, and they would come to me for tech support. They still do. We're now what, 5-6 months into school.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting questions, which I don't mind. I'm friendly. I don't mind answering. But I always said I blame the district. That all you guys all have to do professional development. Luckily, I don't. But there's professional development and you're not getting technology usually in that. And I've actually taught this year 2 or 3 tutorials on how to do Teams. in a virtual setting, and it's I feel it's up to both the educator and the district to say, you need to make sure, because most teachers know Microsoft Word and some Microsoft software, and they'll print it out and something off the internet.
Right.
Bring them onto Teams. They don't get it. There were all these issues, and I don't blame the teachers. I don't blame the parents at home, because unless you're someone like me who uses technology daily and using programs like Photoshop, Illustrator, where they're higher end,
Right.
you're not accustomed to these things. You were accustomed going to school, listen to the teacher talk, take notes, maybe show a movie, take notes, take your test, and go out. This is a whole new experience to both the parents, the kids, and the teachers. And I don't think that any district was prepared for this. And I think hopefully they learn their lesson and will change the way professional development is for some of the teachers now.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And they can hire me to do that. I've actually taught professional development classes to educators in a few different school systems around Westchester.
Right.
And I'm happy to do that. So you can always message me.
Well, I think what's interesting is that I'm hearing stories about people getting jobs overseas and teaching overseas because it's via Zoom anyway, right? So a friend of mine was, Tom's girlfriend was actually asking me, do you want to teach overseas? And they pay you. So it's like being an international teacher, but you're teaching from your house here in America.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'll think about it. But I don't think I have the schedule because I'm doing comics.
Yeah, I actually looked into one of those positions even before all this.
Dream to do that, I love working with foreign students and ESL teacher and incorporating art,
Well, that's the thing. I was looking at that. I forget what country it was for, but it was like our time difference was like I'd have to teach at like 5 a.m. here. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm always going to be awake at 5 a.m. I wake up early, but it would be like basically 5 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe I can do that. But
Right. Anyone have any questions in the comment thing?
Yeah, I was about to go to that because we just hit over 2.5 hours. Another 25. What?
This is like a podcast.
Yeah, another 25 minutes, and we'll hit the longest stream. My longest is 2 hours and 57 minutes.
Wow.
So,
have you seen WandaVision by any chance?
Yes, I have, and I am thoroughly enjoying it.
Isn't that a great show? So I saw 2 articles. I didn't even bother reading them. It wasn't worth the ink on the paper. But it was just like they were saying that WandaVision's too slow and too boring. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I don't think so. For me, as someone who grew up on old sitcoms,
it's called character building.
Exactly. I'm a child in Nick at Night. Every night I was watching all those things. So when doing those sitcoms, and my all-time favorite is the Dick Van Dyke Show, but
Father Knows Best, My Three Sons.
Exactly. So seeing the sitcoms throughout the years that they're doing is just a fun take on.
I love it.
And the little, even though they like last week was 2 weeks ago, it was like the 70s, so it was kind of a Brady Bunch-esque, but even the design of the house kind of had that Brady Bunch feel to it.
Totally.
And I'm like, yeah, and it's just fun for people. Kids today don't know what the Brady Bunch is, but it's like for people our age.
That was like our cousins, our extended family members.
Yeah, there was a point in America I read that more people knew the theme song to the Brady Bunch than the national anthem.
Well, same thing. More people voted in America's Got Talent or whatever it was called, the first one, America's whatever, than in the election. That was the Bush Gore election. We had more people.
Yeah.
Was it America's Got Talent or America's Got something, like the music one, whatever the first one was called?
Oh, the American Idol or something?
American Idol.
Yeah. I think that might have been the
election.
I think that might have been the only season I really hate reality TV outside of like the Food Network.
Yeah.
because it's funny. Everyone thinks, oh yeah, you draw draw cartoons. You must watch cartoons all day. I literally, before the History Channel became like Pawn Stars constantly, I was an American Pickers or whatever. I was on the History Channel and the Food Network. Like those are the channels I'd flip between.
You know what's funny though? It's like I always felt that documentaries were going to be a major push in American cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And reality TV is almost like an offshoot of documentaries,
to a degree, but we got reality TV because of the writer's strike all those years ago, however long it was ago, and now that the writer's strike is over, I want written, I want scripted, I want entertainment. I don't care about getting into people's lives, and it's nothing against them, but we make celebrities out of some of the dumbest people. Or at least they are portrayed as some of the dumbest.
What was her name? Boo Boo something?
Yeah, like that type of
Boo
stuff. Yeah, who cares about that?
But you know who predicted that? Wasn't that the guy who wrote Running Man?
Yeah, who wrote Running Man now?
The sci-fi writer.
That's not
the one Philip K. Dick, wasn't
Dick.
it?
I was gonna say, was that Dick? Yeah, maybe.
I think it was, or Asmanov, one of those guys.
I don't remember who wrote that.
But yeah, they basically, that was about reality TV and fake news. I don't know. I've been watching. I canceled my Netflix because I was really not watching Netflix all that much. But then I canceled. They're like, okay, you're good till the 16th. I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch every documentary I can. So I was like, because I got binging. I really hate binging. It killed me. You know
what? I actually enjoy when I'm in the studio. I work as long as I'll put on something that I'm not going to be like, oh my god, I got to sit and pay attention to. As long as I can listen to the story,
right? Because
I'll listen to podcasts, I'll put music on, but if sometimes I'll watch an old show that I enjoyed and I'll just binge through it, and I'll pick up my head to just adjust my eyes a couple of times. I don't have to.
Like I don't have to. 2 months of the pandemic, all I did was binge. I think I watched like 15 shows in a row. Like I was like, I was just watching movies, like 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 TV series, and I was like, I watched everything that everyone was talking about. What is there left? And then I was like, I have to stop. So I just that's another thing for New Year's. I just canceled that, but it hasn't expired yet. So they charged me.
Yeah, I got a lot of streaming services. I don't know. I'd rather get rid of cable than my streaming services. I don't use Netflix as much as I used to. I'm actually a big Disney Plus guy. I love I love Amazon Prime and actually Hulu.
I got rid of Amazon Prime too because my wife and I had 2 separate accounts, and I was like,
you don't need that.
Yeah, I didn't. But I used it for work mostly and for packages because I'm always mailing stuff.
Yeah.
And actually, it's worth it because really, since I quit, I know I've spent more than $100 in shipping. When you buy stuff from them, you get like a lot of shipping and stuff.
Yeah.
So it is worth it, but there's no reason to have 2 separate accounts, So I got rid of that. And I got rid of my gym membership last week too. So things that, you see, there's a lot of outgoing money, and I'm just like, how do I save? How do I get rid of this overbearing college debt that I've been having? I mean, I paid off my master's degree before I paid off my senior year in SVA, and I'm still paying.
Wow.
Like I just need to eliminate debt. That's
my I have to. My master's degree will be with me forever, I feel. But anyway, man, we're almost at the 2:45 mark. I think I might have to end it because I do believe I need to go to work tomorrow, and unfortunately, I don't work remotely like all the fun people do.
You're missing out.
I know. I love remote work.
I'm in my Batman robe teaching. It's like
yeah. When we have remote days, which we've had 1 or 2 this year, I freaking love it. And I think it's fantastic. It's but also what I do with the kids when I'm teaching them how to draw and everything, I have better technology in my studio than the school gives me to do hybrid learning. So it's better as soon as I'm home.
So since we're leaving, I wanted to do a cheers to Dan Necrosis. I got my soda back.
Absolutely. I'm down to just kind of a little bit of ice in my water, but
So to Dan, we love you.
yes, to
Hope
Dan, we miss you.
And I hope there's like that Eric Clapton song, Tears in Heaven, it's like cheers.
Cheers. So, Ray, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Hold on backstage for a few moments.
Yep.
I actually tonight was a lot of fun for me. I really enjoyed
my hair after I took a shower, but
yeah,
it's like
it's okay. It's better than what I got up here. So yeah.
Disclaimer. Most people put disclaimers before they air.
I will have to put that into the YouTube. Change that. Maybe make say
17.
And yeah, Ray. I should have done that. Just I don't, as a person hanging out, I don't mind cursing. I don't mind any of that stuff in the streams, though. I tend to stay away from that.
Here's a fun fact.
Yes.
I didn't start cursing until age 28, the year I became a teacher.
Interesting. I've been cursing since the 3rd grade.
But I didn't grow up cursing. I mean, honestly, I was just like hearing kids cursing all the time, and then they have such colorful ways of describing you as a teacher. I just started cursing.
let me say this though. I didn't curse in front of my parents until I was like 17 though.
Yeah, I was in my 30s when I cursed with my dad. I was at 30. I remember the moment. The first time I cursed in front of my dad. I was fixing a tire. We're working on a car together. I was removing the tire, and the tire iron hit my hand, my drawing hand, and I was like, "Motherfucker!" My father just looked at me like, "What did you say?"
That's exactly. That's like, well, not that same story, but that's exactly. I hurt myself and I screamed out whatever curse it was. I don't remember what it was, and and my parents just turned, and I'm like
what the?
Yeah, I curse, And it's funny because to this day, people who hang out with me, when they hear me curse, they're just like, "Did that come out of you?" Like but if you hear me normally, and it's not that I like to promote this, but yeah, I don't have the best language. But the second I'm in a professional setting,
right,
I could turn it off.
If you knew me when I would say between ages 15 and 19, maybe even 20, you know what would be coming out of my mouth more than the F word?
What?
Jesus. Jesus will save you. Jesus, put your hands in Jesus. Amazing.
Well,
I used to say Jesus like some people say the N word. It's like I was like Jesus. Yeah. I was like Jesus. I was like abusing the name Jesus.
All right, man. Again, I'm gonna let you. And Mike Lopez, let's do it in credit chat soon.
Yes.
I will totally. Yes, we should all get together and chat together. It'll be a blast. So Ray, I'm gonna send you backstage, hang out for a minute. I'm just gonna do my closing. Thanks again for coming on. I really did have a lot of fun chatting with you. We haven't
strong. This is strong, not the Wakanda.
Yeah.
We had it first, the Bronx. Yeah.
All right, man. I'll see you in a few. All right.
You just gotta get your shoulder exercises in.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks, Ray.
Peace out.
All right, guys. So thanks a lot for tuning in. For those of you who stayed with us for almost the 3 full hours, it was a blast. I've had a lot of fun talking with Ray. I haven't had a chance to really sit down and chat with Ray in a while. We have a couple of phone calls every now and then, but nothing too in depth. So I had a lot of fun with this. And so anyway, just thank you guys for tuning in. You can find me on Facebook at getintoon.net, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Michael Gracia and ToonMaker76 on Twitch. This Saturday, my stream will be on my Dax Photon character for my Storytelling Saturdays. Tomorrow night, I'll be on another podcast. Look for my posts tomorrow to know when to go to it at what time. And My next week guest will be Renee Fitzner, who was my first Get in Tune. He has another, my first Get in Tune guest. He has another Kickstarter going. So that's launching on February 10th. So he'll be joining me February 9th, guys. Thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys again next week. Hope to see you guys on Saturday. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, guys.